Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome to the January 25th regular meeting of the Town Council. If you would, please rise and join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This evening, Tom Koenig and Nancy Harrington are excused from tonight's meeting. On announcements, upcoming meetings, we will have a budget meeting Monday, January 29th. Thursday, February 8th is a regular council meeting. Thursday, February 15th is our public hearing on the budget. And Thursday, February 22nd will be another regular meeting. The 29th meeting is at 6 o'clock. All others are at 7 p.m. and they're all here in the Matthew Thornton room. Eileen, do you have any announcements?
I do not.
Okay.
If I can take a moment.
Sure.
I just wanted to take a moment to recognize, and I know there's a presentation by the police department for a gift from Crime Line, but Crime Line and the Merrimack Police Department lost a good friend over the past week. Steve Kane. He was a big supporter of Crime Line. His family's from town. I knew the man. He's a very good man, and he was a big supporter of the police department, and he was very active within Crime Line. So I want to send out my deepest condolences to his family and to the folks at Crime Line and the police department.
Thank you, Peter. All right. I have nothing on PFOA updates. I don't know, if Eileen, if you have anything? Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Bill. You're welcome.
I apologize, Mr. Chair.
There's no need for an apology.
No, force of habit, I guess. The Citizens for Clean Water Advisory Group convened on Monday with Councilor Albert and myself and continue to have a productive dialogue regarding PFOA issues here in town, specific strategies as to what they can be doing to further educate people in the community. We're going to be meeting again in February to further talk. We met for about 2 hours on Monday night, and it was productive. The other follow-up is that the Department of Health and Human Services is going to release their cancer incident report. Lisa Morris, who's the director, one of the directors at Health and Human Services, announced back during the October presentation regarding the blood serum assessment survey that Merrimack did not see an increase in cancer-related issues as it pertained to PFOAs. The report is about 9 pages. I've had the chance to get an advance copy and look at it ahead of time. Ironically, they actually drew some of the cancer data from the New Hampshire bear with me for a second. They used the New Hampshire State Cancer Registry to review diagnoses in the town of Merrimack from January 2005 through December 2014. I was probably one of those diagnoses reflected in the report because I was diagnosed at that particular time, which I thought was interesting. But they're going to show over that 9-year period, based on what they consider to be, I forget the terminology that they use, what they expect versus what occurred. They anticipated 173 expected cases, and that, I'm sorry, I'm misreading it, I apologize. They anticipated I apologize. You know what? I printed out the report that Eileen gave, the email. The number is going to show that the expected cases are going to be at a delta A, and that the observed cases are going to be slightly higher than what was considered to be expected. According to Health and Human Services, they feel that that is within a normal parameter of expectations. Even though it was a slightly higher number than what they expected, it was within the normal range for incidents of cancer occurring in our community over that 10-year period. Now, mind you, it only goes through 2014. I imagine there's going to be additional data that they'll be looking at from 2015 moving forward to see if there is an uptick, because obviously with specifically the MVD users, with the level of PFOAs, while there was the blood serum survey showed that there was a certain increase in people within the survey that had a percentage of PFCs. That particular data is going to have to be monitored moving forward as to whether those people are potentially impacted by the carcinogens that exist within PFC. So I thought the report that was given to us by Health and Human Services, again, there were no surprises based on what Director Morris had communicated to us back in October at the community-wide forum that we had. So that's going to be released tomorrow, and I anticipate that Health and Human Services will have it published, and I would hope that the town manager would include that on our website for people to have access to. If that's not,
Will do.
thank you, Eileen. I appreciate it. Other than that, that's really all I have. The groundwater advisory commission met last week in March. We are hopeful that we are going to have a set of criteria for municipality and water authorities to make application to the commission to either seek a loan or a grant application as it relates to water issues that are going on in their particular community. Obviously, we're targeting not just water quality, but we're also focused on infrastructure, and I've actually encouraged the commission to take a look at exploration. I think it's very important that if you have communities that may have a polluted well, that may be tapping into alternate resources outside their community, that if they feel that they have the geology to accommodate a new well, that they be able to make an application for grant monies to see whether or not they can receive monies to do the necessary geological work necessary to locate new water sources in their town. So I was really excited about that, and looking forward to see what the subcommittee has regarding criteria as it relates to obtaining grant monies from the commission. And lastly, there was an email that was sent out to us that negotiations are still ongoing between the state and Saint-Gobain, and they anticipate having a resolution, and they have for the lack of a better term, they have a drop dead date of the end of February. And I know Eileen has communicated to that, and Assistant Commissioner Clark Frizzy has also communicated that as well. So very optimistic to see what the state has been able to negotiate with Saint-Gobain, and I hope it comes to fruition. Go ahead, Eileen.
The only thing that I just wanted to add, because it seemed to be the only real thing that Clark added today or yesterday to his email, was that during the negotiations, I know there had been some talk about once the negotiations had been completed that there may be some door that slammed shut for the for the residents or the people who are have been exposed to PFOA to not be able to sue Saint-Gobain or whoever it is that they want to sue, but that they are not closing that door. So during the negotiations with Saint-Gobain, that door will still remain open with whatever document that they have, so that people can move forward with their own suits if they choose.
And lastly, with Chris Christensen, who's a state representative who sits on the commission with me, we continue to work with the commission to see if there are any opportunities for not just Merrimack but other communities as it relates to private well sources, to see if there are opportunities available for them to remediate their particular situation. We continue to look for solutions in that particular regard as well. So we're kind of in a holding pattern right now based on the negotiations with the state and Saint-Gobain and obviously MVD, which doesn't apply to the private wells, but we're a little bit hamstrung waiting to see what the ultimate result is for those particular negotiations. So that's where we're at.
Let's see if I can make myself, oh, I don't think I can.
Do you want me? The meeting was close to cancel, wasn't it? All right, here's Jackie's update. The engineer and the construction manager for the project continue to refine the plans to meet the goals of the project, and so we can stay within our established budget. The next meeting will be with a solar energy company, and we're going to look into the feasibility of that, and that was about it. Thank you. Comments from the press and public. If you like to address the council, you can sit here at the table or stand at the mic. Good evening. Whichever you prefer. You just make sure the green light is bright.
Brilliant, okay. Wendy Thomas, 10 Wildcat Falls Road. As a reminder, we had our private well, which is located roughly 5 miles from Saint-Gobain, tested on September 25th, 2017 by Granite State Analytical Services. The result came back at 20.4 total PFOA PFOS. As you know, PFOA is a dangerous chemical that's been linked to thyroid cancer, high cholesterol, and endocrine issues, and has been detected in drinking water all over Merrimack. The EPA has an advisory limit of 70 parts per trillion, PPT. This is not law, it is an advisory that originally started off at 400 in the spring of 2016 and then was lowered to 100, which was then lowered to 70 based on public and scientific pressure. Again, this is an advisory level and not law. Vermont, New York, New Jersey, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania clearly think this level is too high and are working on lowering the level to protect their residents. I presented our water test results at a town-state water meeting. Representatives from DES, New Hampshire DES, asked to come to our house and retest our well for both MTBE and PFOA PFOS. They originally came out in November, but the water sample was mishandled, and so they retested on December 20th. I have the results. First, there are no MTBEs. No MTBEs were detected. For that, I am grateful, especially living down the street from the DPW gas tanks. However, the total PFOA PFOS count as tested by the state of New Hampshire was recorded at 45 parts per trillion, over double the level that we had believed it to be. Along with those chemicals, 8 other chemicals were detected: C4, C5, C6, C7, C8. Those 8 chemicals, along with the PFOA and PFOS, are the chemical fingerprint for the Saint-Gobain contamination. Our well water is incompatible with life. When we have a private well, and I'm talking when the town of Merrimack has a private well that is 5 miles from ground zero, testing at 45 parts per trillion, then we have a problem, a very big problem. Our town is contaminated. What's the safe level for PFOA, PFOS in our water? 0. 0. If you don't tell people to stop drinking the water in Merrimack, I will. Everyone needs to stop drinking our town water now. Every single person in Merrimack who wants their water tested should be able to get it done and paid for by the state. Every single person in Merrimack who wants their blood tested should be able to get it done and paid for by the state. Every single person who wants to get their house water filtered should be able to get that done and paid for by the state. And the state needs to hold the polluters accountable by suing Saint-Gobain for damages. How can this be done? The state of New Hampshire, like was done for towns in New York and Vermont, needs to declare Merrimack a Superfund site. When that's done, the state can then use Superfund money to help clean up the entire town's water supply. And then the state can go after Saint-Gobain because they are the company that did this. Saint-Gobain made a $40 billion profit last year. They are one of the richest companies on the face of the planet. And they made that profit while illegally dumping carcinogenic and toxic chemicals into our town's water. Already there are reports in New York of banks not authoring refinancing because houses have contaminated water. I spoke with a woman from there this afternoon, and she said that the value of her house has gone from $150,000 to $103,000 based solely on water contamination. She told me that most house values have gone down between 20 and 30% since word of contamination has gotten out, and that there are many foreclosures. I plan to initiate discussions with a legal firm to see if the residents of Merrimack can file a class action lawsuit against Saint-Gobain for loss of property value due to contamination. Residents in New York and Vermont have already initiated such suits. The residents of Merrimack did not contaminate our water. A multi-billion-dollar company came into our town and dumped their toxic chemicals into our water supply, threatening our town, our families, and our lives. It's that company, Saint-Gobain, that needs to be held accountable and made to pay what it takes to repair the damage they did to Merrimack's water and to our town. I have our test results that I will submit to you.
You can give them to Polly. Thank you, Wendy. Right, yeah.
Eileen, can we have Mrs. Thomas's well results entered into the record, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. Good evening.
I have a letter that I'm just going to give to you guys.
Yeah,
It's
if you could have
included.
Paul Hill sign them down. Thank you.
So green, it's working?
Pardon me?
Green, it's working?
If your light's on, it's working,
Okay.
yes.
Green means go. Okay. Hi. Catherine Hodge, 44 Belmont Drive here in Merrimack. I have a copy of a letter that I've just given to you guys that was sent to the Flatley Company by DES dated October 10th, 2017 regarding a follow-up to a phone call with Kevin Walker of the Flatley Company. It addresses the concerns of developing the land beside Saint-Gobain without causing further harm by releasing contaminants into the air or water from the soil on Tax Map 6E Lot 31. DES has made Flatley aware that the PFAS compounds were significantly higher than state standards allow and asked them to gather additional information regarding further environmental issues before beginning the project that could cause further harm to our town now and in our futures. So it is with great concern to the residents that we have discovered that the Planning Board agreed at their October meeting minutes, which were approved. All present agreed to draft a letter echoing DES concerns, which contains factual data for those who still don't believe it, and encourage compliance. Yet in the November 2017 minutes, after a discussion and personal beliefs were introduced, not factual, and were also strongly spoken, it was then voted to not send a letter to encourage agreement with DES. We ask why. So to date, after discussion with DES, where they have stated that they have not received a follow-up letter from Flatley, we are requesting that the Town Council draft a follow-up letter to Flatley, echoing the concerns and the requests of DES, and making a statement that this is a serious contamination issue, and yes, there is factual data to back it up, and that you are concerned about the health and the welfare of our town and the people who live here and the people that will move here in the future. I also request that you send a letter in such a way as to ensure that it is received and request a response in an appropriate time frame. We understand that you have no formal control over this, but we would encourage you to make a stand with us. The Planning Board has let us down. Please don't let us down now. Just because some people may choose to close their eyes or deny that this is a major concern, this issue is not going away, and it will only become worse if we don't stand up for ourselves and for the residents of Merrimack. We want a positive future for our town and to uphold our town name in a positive light, not to become known as a town who doesn't care about their citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I'm sorry, is it Hodge or Dodge?
Hodge,
Ho- That's what I thought. Okay. So, Ms. Hodge, you talk about a follow-up letter to the Flatley Company?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is a letter that's directed to Saint-Gobain, not directed to Flatley. So I'm just confused. I,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Eileen.
Yes, this letter was sent to Mr. Flatley as a result of this. There were all kinds of things going on with the PFOA, and for some time, and this Flatley project was going on for some time. And I received phone calls from DES at various times and called them myself and said, hello, there's this Flatley property right next door to St. Cobain, surrounding St. Cobain. It's ready to go through the planning board, and what are you going to do about that? Because it's not within the town's urban compact.
Yes.
So the state makes decisions on that, on various things and curb cuts and things like that in that area. So I finally, calls back and forth. Oh, we didn't know about that. Oh, yeah, I remember you told me that. And then all of a sudden, this letter came out, and it's strictly advisory. And so I called Tim Thompson, who's the community development director, and I said to him, "You make sure that the planning board director, the planning board chairman, is well aware of it. That he reads it into the record, and make sure that." That it's very clear that that we're aware that this letter has been sent to them, and that's the last I heard of it.
Okay, I have the planning board meeting minutes from October, and at that point, the planning board was aware of it, and they were asked by DES to kind of like, hey, help us out here, send them something. So reading from the minutes, the planning board consensus was to send such a letter. And then there's a statement made about a project that was being worked on in Webster Green, so I'll just skip that. So Tim Thompson replied that this project, meaning the Flatley Company, is a project that would disturb the ground, whereas the Webster Green was just existing, so it had nothing to do with it. Michael Redding asked how data would help. Chairman Best said Flatley could decide not to build. The planning board has no environmental regulations, but it can say that it shares DES concerns and that the applicant should do research before building. Tim Thompson said the letter would indicate the board's concern, even though Flatley could build tomorrow. It was simply a symbolic gesture. Chairman Best did not want the planning board to be blamed if something showed up 20 years later after it gave its approval. Tim Thompson will circulate a draft to discuss at the next meeting. So at that planning board meeting in October, everybody had agreed, a solid vote, 6-0. Yes, we're going to write a letter. Yes, we're going to back up DES. Yes, we're going to get this in the works. Then you go to the November minutes. Chairman Best recused himself from discussing and voting on the following item. At the planning board's request, Community Development Director Tim Thompson had drafted a letter from the board to John Flatley Company expressing the town's concurrence with requests made by NHDES regarding their concern about substances that may impact the property approved for multifamily development and urging them to reconsider NHDES recommendations prior to developing the property, because they were going to be kicking up all the dirt and all of the contamination was going to float back out again. Tom Koenig stated that PFOA contamination is a controversial subject to some who are not scientifically informed. It is not known how much impact low levels cause. It's already been proven that any amount of PFOA has negative impacts on health and the body and on the kids and on the environment. There's statistical scientific data that backs that up, so that was an ignorant statement. It is not known how much it will cost. He is concerned about unnecessarily raising red flags. Too late, red flags have already been raised. This has been going on. This is our third year now dealing with it. Lower property values will achieve the same end. Wendy already stated that property values have already decreased because of this. We're getting a negative impact with our name in regards to the town. We want to boost it. We want to have people wanting to move to Merrimack, wanting to know that they are coming here and they are safe. If you go down through the forums and you start reading through the water issues, you've got people that are moving into town and they're reading this and they're going, oh my God, what a mistake we made. We don't want that effect to be felt in our town. We want all of this to get cleared up. So the lower property, that's already gone through the roof. So NHDES already sent a letter, which the town, as I said, is not required to amplify. Alistair Mills was not convinced that this is a serious issue. We've already proven that it is. It is the purview of NHDES and not the planning board. The effect of construction on workers is an OSHA issue, and Lynn Christensen agreed with this. It becomes an OSHA issue after the fact. After the damage is already done, then we can make a phone call to OSHA going, oh, guess what? We've got employees who are now poisoned. Okay, time for you guys to step in. We don't want that. We don't want contractors coming into the town putting their employees at risk, because the minute that they put their employees at risk, they've already put us back at full risk again by doing everything. So like I said earlier, I understand that you guys have nothing to do with the planning board. You have no say in what they do. You have no say in what they've done. But please back us up when it comes to DES.
So again, I'm looking respectfully, Ms. Hodge, I'm looking at a letter that's written to Saint-Gobain.
It's not written to Saint-Gobain.
It's written to
Flatley.
Edward Canning, Director of Environmental and Health Safety, Saint-Gobain Performance Plastics.
You got a
That's who it's
different one.
addressed to.
The one I have is for Flatley.
Is that? You may have the incorrect one. Sorry, you've been reading the wrong one, though.
Okay. I apologize for
No,
making
I
pontificate for the
apologize.
last 10 minutes.
Because I thought I had an extra copy, and I'm like, oh, I don't have a copy again.
Yes, Eileen.
I know I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I just want to just say this one thing. I knew about this letter. As I said, I very strongly spoke to the community development director, who assured me that he had spoken to the planning, the head of the planning board, and that this was going to take place. And I have heard nothing since then. So what you just told me is a
new.
big surprise to me. And personally, I concur with you, because even though Saint-Gobain's own water inside their building does not have high PFOA counts because it's MVD water, but their groundwater tested very high.
Yep, and the
Very
overflow
high.
that's dripping into the river, all the water that's settling in now into the soil, and from what I'm to understand, they've only done a certain depth level. That's not going to cut it.
The depth levels that they've already done have indicated a very strong level of PFOA in the groundwater on that site.
So that's why I don't understand. And like back in October, the planning board members that were present were Robert Best, Alistair Mills, Tom Koenig, Michael Redding, Paul McLaughlin, and the alternate Nelson Disco. At that time, when they suggested writing the letter, it was 6-0. Everybody was for it. And then, let me get my papers back, sorry. Then again, when we came back into the November one, where you had no knowledge of it, the members that were present at that time were Robert Best, but he excused himself, so he had no vote in there. Alistair Mills was there, Tom Koenig was there again, Lynn Christensen was now there, and Desiree Fault was there. So if Robert Best excused himself, that left 4 people, 4-0, against writing the letter. So I'm not pointing fingers or mentioning names, but you know, there seems to be a little bit of difficulty in some people understanding that, yes, this is an issue. DES says it's an issue. DHHS says it's an issue. The study that you referred to earlier, going from the dates up to 2014,
Right, that was the cancer occurrence study.
2016, I was diagnosed twice with cancer.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Twice in 1 year. Finished one surgery, went back in for some testing another month, got diagnosed again. So that study, I don't agree with. I think all of the new numbers that are going to come forward are really going to show that, hey, yes, we have a problem. Yes, we have a cancer cluster. Yes, we have this issue. Yes, as Wendy said, we need to be named as a Superfund site. We need to get this cleared up. And that's why I'm please asking you guys, just, you have all the information. Back up DES. Send, your standard form letter, whatever you want to call it, to the Flatley Company saying, hey, this is what's been suggested. Even if you have to say, I know we don't have a say in it, but could you please do this? Please take our residents into concern when you do this. Flatley's going to come in, they're going to build their properties, they're going to go, okay, we've made our billions of dollars, and away they go. Who's going to suffer for the rest of it? The town. Who's going to suffer? The residents. Who's going to suffer? Future residents. Do you think people are going to want to keep moving into town when people are already questioning us about the water?
Thank you, Catherine.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Eileen, I'm curious if you could find out from assessing how I've heard both from Ms. Hodge and Wendy that the property values have decreased 30%. And I haven't sensed that, so I'd be curious if you could pull that together.
Sure, I will, but the last time that I asked, they said no, that the properties were actually appreciating in value. not
Yeah, I made the
depreciating.
request a couple of months ago, Finley, directly, and Lauren said that the values were increasing.
Okay, because I just didn't sense it, but I have not dug into it.
No, I understand. I understand. The one piece of information was the town of Bedford actually made, for those specific properties over at Greenfield Farms, they actually made an accommodation and abated several of the properties over there based on the presence of PFOAs over in the water area that was impacting that section of Greenfield Farms. So there's been stuff out there with the town of Bedford, not the
Right,
town
in
of
order
Merrimack,
to
so.
do it, it would have to show
But-
up, though.
But the other flip of the coin, I mean, this is a council where we've written a letter to the state supporting new standards for DES to use to track air emissions that are being propelled into the atmosphere, not just by Saint-Gobain, but with other companies that exist in New Hampshire. And I think that it would be an appropriate response to send a follow-up letter to both Saint-Gobain and to Mr. Flatley, explaining that we support what DES is doing, that they do what they need to do to remediate their site before they put a shovel in. And I don't think we're being unreasonable, Mr. Chairman. And the reason why I say that is because the Flatley project actually, their permit is a conditional use permit. Any further work that needs to be done on the site has to be brought back to the planning board for site review. There's an additional step to that process. And I only know that because I inquired about it today. So I think it would behoove this body, if the planning board chooses not to, and I actually understand why they did what they did, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand why they did what they did. But that being said, I think, as a body of 7, even though there's only 5 here tonight, as a body of 7, I think we have a responsibility to the property owners in our community to stand up and say to Mr. Flatley, we want you to come to Merrimack, but we want you to do the project right. And we want you to make sure that whatever you put in there, that whoever settles in there is not going to be impacted in the same way that some members of our community have been impacted. So I actually would make, if it's appropriate, to make a motion that we do write a letter to Saint-Gobain and to Mr. Flatley, Mr. John Flatley, addressing the letter of October 10th from DES, reiterating the need that before they put a shovel into the ground, that they test around and they do what they need to do to remediate it, so that when the project moves forward and it becomes shovel ready, people in the community will have an assurance that, for all intents and purposes, it's pretty close to zero. The impurities that are on the ground. And that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'm good with that. If you have a second, we can have a discussion. I don't know, should we, normally we do a letter like this, it's not as a motion, it would be as a consensus, because it
True,
almost
but
has to become an agenda item, I would think, but,
not necessarily. We've done it under the PFOA update before. We've done letters to there.
Eileen.
I just have a suggestion, and that is, what has been asked for is really what you, in my opinion, you should be doing is you should be underlining what and strongly supporting this letter from DES to Flatley and sending it to Flatley, not, not amplifying certain sections or telling them they need to get it down to a certain level or anything like that, but just saying, here's a letter from DES. They've asked you to do X, Y, Z, suggested to you, and we suggest the same. Because you don't have a...
Okay. Then
you don't-
I'll
you
take
don't-
that as the motion, absolutely.
Okay.
Motion's okay, or just a consensus, or what?
I'm fine with a motion. We'll
Okay.
just write the letter.
Is there a second?
What?
I just wanted to speak to it. I think, too, that we're going to ask for a reply back, at least an acknowledgement of that.
Your mic.
I
It's
have it
on.
on.
So,
We're going to ask
It
for
might
an
not be clear.
acknowledgement of that as well. Okay, I have no problem with that. It's obviously a clear problem with DES, and so if we're going to underline it, I agree.
Is that clicking? Thank you, Peter, yes.
Oh, sorry.
I said thank you. I was,
Oh, no.
I hear the click over here, so I wasn't sure. Sorry about that. Jackie?
Yes. I'm sorry about my voice. I assume that this letter was sent. I assume I even read it at the time. It's dated in October. From my reviewing it, it seems like it says, first of all, it's a trustworthy letter. It's from our DES, so Flatley can assume it isn't just a bunch of non-scientists, non-experts talking. I think it's a good thing for us to do.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you,
Motion
Tom.
by Council Boyce, second by Tom Thornton. Would you like to speak to it? You all set?
I refer my right honorable colleagues to the speech I gave moments ago.
Thank you, Bill. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0. Thank you, Bill.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further comments from the press and public? Yep.
My name is Kathy Stack. I'm from 7 Knollwood Drive in Merrimack, New Hampshire. Have been a resident for over 30 years. I am...
Ma'am, could you just speak up a little bit?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. I've been a resident for over 30 years. I am one of the residents in town who's impacted by the Saint-Gobain contaminated water in the disputed area. First, I'd like to say thank you to everyone here. I appreciate you hearing the concern. I really appreciate you moving things forward and being honest and truthful. And I've had wonderful conversations with Eileen and many of you here. And Bill, thank you. This is a serious concern. This is a serious concern for those living here now, for those living in the future. I still don't have a resolve. I am hopeful that negotiations will be positive. I've been hearing that for a while. I remain hopeful. I'm a hopeful person. However, on the back of my hopefulness is a concern that, in addition to my no resolution, no remedy to my contaminated well, now we're talking about a pretty large tract of land that is possibly contaminated, possibly going to be built on, that will bring further damage, construction to the health in the community. I don't think any of us want that. I think you all just supported a wonderful thing, and I just wanted to voice my concern and my appreciation that you're taking this seriously and moving forward in a positive way.
Thank you, Kathy.
Also brief. Green light, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Lorraine Allen, 16 French Court. Also, I'd like to thank you very, very much. I spoke to DES yesterday, Leanne Atwell. She was really kind of stunned that first of all, they hadn't had a response from Flatley. I told her about the planning board minutes because we were kind of stunned when we read those. She stated that she felt that may be part of the reason that they didn't get a response, but doesn't know that for sure. She talked about the storm drain runoff and the concerns in the land, and you've all seen the plans where the building's going to go and all of that and what's going to happen in terms of more impact to the Merrimack River, not just the soil and everything else. So we had about a 20-minute chat there. I also told her that we were going to ask, the town council's thoughts, and hopefully they could just echo, DES's concerns and recommendations, because they are the experts here. They were hopeful that could happen, so I'm really glad. I also stated to her, I said, I'm a founder of Merrimack Citizens for Clean Water, oh boy. And I said I would like to write a letter, if you feel it's appropriate, Leanne, on the Citizens for Clean Water letterhead that we have on behalf of residents, and this is what I'll say. If anyone here feels like they want to look it over or something, it's going to be, very brief and just basically echoing and sending our concerns to Flatley. It'll be very brief and very appropriate, but I'd be glad for anyone to look it over before I send that out. She said she felt that would be very appropriate and very helpful. So I just wanted you to know that. And one concern that I have that just to think about as a town is there have been people who've really tuned in. We've all learned basically on the job in the last year. There have been ups and downs, and it's been quite the course. But I've also noted, and it's rather troubling, and I saw it in this planning board process, is we have this interjection of personal opinion. And as you all know, I think you all strive to be very professional in the jobs that you do. That's my impression of all of you. But I hear here and there people in various positions in town that they're there to represent us, the residents, and we work and we have families and health issues in our families, and we want to trust that they are representing professionally what the greater good is. And I hear comments that I don't believe. I don't like to hear that phrase. That's personal opinion. I work hard to keep my personal opinion down, and I've worked hard to get information and facts, and when people ask me questions, if I have things that I can refer them to that's factual based and expert, backed up, I will do so. And I've been very, very careful about that. And I'm worried that in town I hear some of the MVD folks on the commissioners, not all, some of the planning board, this I don't believe, and this isn't what I feel is a problem. I don't know if we have a code of conduct or something. I know we have code of ethics in town, and we have all kinds of, things here, because I've raised some of those issues over the last few months, unfortunately. But this interjection, you know what I'm saying, of personal opinion, that's not based on fact. And people do that. We all have a right to do that, and we do it every day, all of us. But when you are there with your name on the placard and you are representing, and in that role, I'm not lecturing any of you because I haven't had that, here. Everybody's tuning in and doing a great job. But I hear it. It's not the majority, but it seems to sway, and it seems to still be said. And it bothers me. It's bothering me tremendously. It's not professional, and I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that other than, people riling up and saying, vote them out. It's so hostile. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't feel good to me. I'm a social worker. It doesn't feel good to me. So that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Thank you. Eileen?
Thank you for indulging me. I think the thing that concerns me the most is that while the DES went ahead and wrote this letter of advice, at the same time they approved their permits. So they had the right to not approve the permits, but they chose to approve them and then write this letter.
Interesting. Please. I presume it's additional information?
Yes. I understand that DS did approve permits and things like that. A lot of
if that's on, you're not close enough.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Certain things weren't brought to light until after the fact about the different contaminants, the amount of the contaminants, where they specifically are, how they're affecting. We're getting more scientific information. We're getting more factual information. So I could say 5 years ago I decided to do something and I signed off on everything, but 2 years ago I found out a whole bunch of information, and you can't disregard everything that you've now brought to light. You can't do that. If I say to you, okay, you can do this, but then something else shows up I apologize and say, okay. And that's why we've asked, as Bill had stated, not to leave things closed, to leave things open-ended. They start digging, and there's a huge issue above and beyond what we all expected, or whatever the case may be. It needs to get handled at that point in time. We can't just turn around and go, oh, well, we signed permits for you guys a couple of years ago, so we're just going to have to suck it up. No, we can't do that. They're going to have to leave everything open-ended in case something happens, and then we deal with it when it happens. And then you may have to go and deal with it in a different way. You may have to approach things in a different way. You may have to give out new permits. You may have to rescind permits. You have to move, in this circumstance especially, you have to move according to, no pun intended, the flow of the water. You can't just put up a wall and say, okay, this is what we're doing, this is when we're doing it, and this is what's going to happen. Life doesn't happen that way. And I don't think that this company coming in and doing their construction is going to happen in one fell swoop either. They've even said that they want to bring it in different sections, and they're approving different things. So I'm just praying with all my might, and I'm not a religious person, but I've really become one in the last couple of years. Leave everything open-ended so that we're not cut off at the knees, so that we can stop them or put regulations and permits and fines if necessary to make sure that we are the ones who are benefiting, as I said earlier, not when Flatley decides to leave town and go, okay, well, we messed you guys up, so now you deal with it. Because they can buy the property, they can say they want to build, we can give them all the permits they want, but in the end, they don't have to do anything. They can just leave it, or they can come in, they can make a big mess and go, oh, well, we didn't want to deal with this, and they can leave. And then what do we do? So please, when you're discussing all this, make sure everything stays open-ended, as Eileen had suggested too. Thank you again.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, anything? Pardon me? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Anybody like to further address the council? Seeing none coming forward, I'll move on to appointments. Item 1 under appointments, the council to be presented information about the new lottery game Keno 603, which can be played exclusively in taverns and restaurants that have an active liquor pouring license. And standing in this evening for Executive Director Charlie McIntyre is Deputy Director Linda Plant, who will be making this presentation for us. And Linda, you could sit right here, be perfect. Just have to, I don't think it was turned off, was it? It's on, yeah, and you might just have to pull it forward. They're apparently having difficulty hearing it back there, so.
All right, let me know if you can't hear me. Thank you for having me again. I'm Linda Plant, the Deputy Director with New Hampshire Lottery, filling in for Charlie McIntyre. I was really happy to come today. I have a connection with Merrimack. That's where my husband is from, and my in-laws have been here over 40 years, so I was more than happy to come and be in a community that's like a second home to me. I'm here to talk about Keno, to share a little bit of information about it, and certainly answer any questions that you have. But my first question is to ask you, do you know who the Powerball winner is in Merrimack? Does anybody know? We're looking for somebody to come
somebody
forward.
from town, I've been told, but I don't know.
Yes,
who it is.
that's.
Do you know who it is?
I bought a ticket at Reed's Ferry, and it wasn't me.
It
so.
wasn't you. It's so close. It really is. It's so great to have that, and it's like a mystery every single day. We don't know yet. They have not come forward. The same with you. We heard it is someone from Merrimack, but we don't know if they'll be coming in or coming with an attorney. But we thought maybe we'd get some inside scoop. So I guess I have to report tomorrow that you don't know either, unless it's one of you keeping quiet.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Nancy, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of ducks to put in a row for that. So just a little bit about Keno and where we are now. It was put into law last July, and New Hampshire Lottery was asked to take the ball and run with it. As of December 15th, Keno is now available. We were out and got approval with cities. We have 7 cities that are able to sell Keno. We have 45 establishments. So now we're working with the towns to see if that's something that might be available in each of your communities. So we have some experience at this point with that. We have 23 establishments in the Merrimack area that potentially could sell Keno if that's something that gets approved in your town. the process is to, I want to talk a little bit about Keno and allow you the opportunity to think about whether or not this is something you should have the people in your community weigh in on if they would like to have Keno available. It all started back in 1964 with the lottery. The same process took place when we were first selling New Hampshire lottery tickets. We went out to all the towns and cities for a vote, and it was 198 towns and cities that said, yes, we want lottery, and 11 that said they didn't. And here we are over 50 years later, $1.9 billion that went to education. So we continue to work towards education. I'm very passionate about what we do. I know that there has been some concerns with gambling and issues with that. This Keno legislation does provide 1% to go to Health and Human Services to assist with any type of, counseling or addiction. And it's really looking at, bringing money to the community for, the full-day kindergarten, as well as for establishments that do offer the Keno. We've already reported, we already went back, asked the establishments in the cities currently how this is doing, and it's above plan right now. And they already reported that their sales for drinks and food and other things at their establishments are up close to 20% since selling Keno. So we're looking at just providing information about, the opportunity to sell Keno, an opportunity for the establishments to, increase their business, directly and indirectly, because they do get some money if they sell Keno, but they also, if they sell more of whatever they have for food and drink, then that's just as good for them. And then in addition, we are, funding making money to fund full-day kindergarten. And that is, a big opportunity that's going on now that for fiscal year 2019, any areas that do have the full-day kindergarten would get $1,100 per pupil for that, whether or not it's supported in your community. So that is important to know that this is, the legislation is supporting the kindergarten, no matter what the communities, weigh in about having it in their area. So it really is to for the business owners to hopefully take some of the money back from going over the border to Massachusetts and have people stay in New Hampshire and enjoy it there. So with that, I want to stop and pause if there was any specific questions you would have.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for coming and talking to us. You said potentially 23 businesses, but have any businesses, you don't have to name them, but have you specifically heard from any Merrimack businesses?
Yes. I asked about it today. There has been 7 or 8 particular businesses that have contacted and have interest in selling Keno locally. We try to reach out to everybody just so they know that it is available. So of the 23, I know that there's definitely some that are interested.
Okay. And I'm curious, do you guys project when this money, you think you'll be able to send this money back to the communities? Any?
For the kindergarten?
Yeah, for the kindergarten.
Well, it's for fiscal year 19, so next year, or, starting in this July for the fiscal year 19 is when it's supposed to start.
Thank you.
Jackie?
I'm the only person in Merrimack doesn't know anything about Keno.
Okay.
Is it a table game?
Oh.
You don't know anything. I knew that.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, I'd be happy to answer questions about Kenos. But it is similar to if you're familiar with any other lottery games, Powerball or Lucky for Life, or it's you pick. It's a numbers game. You pick numbers, and it's electronic. So if you go to establish, so say you go to a local restaurant, bar area, and it would be like a TV there, and you would place a bet from $1 to $25, and you pick numbers. You can pick to match one number, you can pick to match 12 numbers, and the bets can range. And it's almost like playing bingo You know, you just want to match as many numbers as you can, and the higher your bet, the more numbers you match, the more money you can win. So every 5 minutes, a different set of numbers come up. So you look to see if you win. So that's something you do right at the establishment. And then the establishment itself gets an 8% commission for offering and selling Keno, as well as, you know, most people stay a little bit longer because they're playing. It's like playing, you know, a trivia game at a bar. Just something fun you do with other people, and you can, you know, spend as little or as much as you want.
How do you, excuse me, share the revenue?
How do we share the revenue?
Yeah, among municipalities,
Oh, yeah.
according to what we put in.
No, it is. It's a set amount per. So for the full day kindergarten, is that money is set aside for depending on how many pupils you have in full day kindergarten. It's $1,100, and that's the potential to go up to $1,800 if Keno gets enough business. It could go up to $1,800. So whether or not Merrimack participates in that, they'll still, if they have full day kindergarten, have that amount. But the revenue, the 8% commission for the establishment, so, you know, if all 23 or 3 of any of the establishments in Merrimack sell Keno, they would get an 8% commission on their sales, plus any additional business that they may bring in for that. So no matter what, there's a lot of opportunities to bring money to the Merrimack community.
Linda, I was, you said at fiscal year 18-19, it's going to be $1,100 for each full-time
For 19, yeah. Yep.
full-time kindergarten student.
Mhm.
It's just a one-time thing, or
Yep, that's a great question. Hopefully it's not a one-time thing. It is a guarantee for the first year. The funding is going to be there for the first year. And then but after that, we have to get as many communities to participate. So that's why it is important to have as many cities and towns be a part of this so we can add more funding to it. So we don't know after that if we can continue it unless we have as many cities as we can and towns. So we have the first year potentially to have that increase for the following years, or we might not have funding if we don't.
okay, thank you. Peter and then Phil.
Okay. You have to be 18 or older to play?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Now, obviously, when you guys were proposing this, you must have reached out to Massachusetts. They've been in the Keno business for a long time.
Okay.
Did you find any cons? I know you're here giving us all the pros of it all and everything,
Right.
but did you find any cons that a community should be concerned about?
Yeah, we did reach out to the other communities, and right now we have not had everybody makes us more aware of whether the crime, if it brings crime or anything like that. We have not been aware of any additional crime recently because of Keno, but I think what we've heard from other communities is just, is there additional potential for addictions, to gambling, and that's why we are putting money to Health and Human Services for that. But it's been very positive for other areas. It's something that people want to do, and it's just an opportunity for entertainment that we're hoping to keep in New Hampshire.
Bill?
Thank you, Linda, for your testimony. Out of the 234 communities in the state of New Hampshire, how many communities have you outreached to? How many communities have put this to the ballot? And how many communities have voted for it and voted against it?
Yeah. That's a great question. You definitely put me on the spot for that. Right now we have the 7 cities. All the cities went out and voted. 7 of them have approved it. And we have reached out, and currently in the process of reaching out to every town, so hundreds of towns. And I don't have the exact numbers because each day we gain more and more, but I'd be glad to get those numbers for you.
Please.
But definitely for sure, we have 7 cities that have already approved. The cities have gone through it, and 45 establishments out of those 7 cities so far. But I can get you the amount of towns on warrant and the amount of towns that we've reached out to.
That'd be great.
I know we're reaching out to all of them, and we had the other day with the I was supposed to go to Jaffrey one of the nights that the snow was bad, and I was ready to go in my car, and Jaffrey said, "No, please don't come," because of the ice. But we had someone scheduled to go up to Haverhill, Stratford, Jaffrey. So we had 5 representatives from the lottery going to all different parts of the state. But I'll get that information for you.
Is there anything further?
I was going to make an editorial comment, but I don't think it's appropriate, so.
All righty. Paul?
So I'm an establishment. I get licensed through the state,
You get licensed through New Hampshire Lottery.
through New Hampshire Lottery. So any permitting that we would have for selling games of chance or things like that, no, it's through the state.
Yes, it's separate. So it is a $500 fee per year to get a license. There is a background check and all of that involved in the process.
Would that be similar to our police chief having to sign off on liquor licenses? Would they have to sign off on these establishments to be able to have Keno?
Well, they already have to have a liquor license in order to sell Keno. So that
Right.
process has already been
So
done.
that she doesn't have to, in this case, she doesn't have to
Right.
re-sign off on an establishment
Right.
then? Okay.
Peter?
We have an amusement device ordinance in which the businesses have to, or pay for a fee to have a certain amount of devices. Would the Keno machines be exempt from that?
I'm not aware of that ordinance that you have.
My question was that, and she said that they're licensed through the state, so since they're licensed through the state, we wouldn't be able to collect the license fee as well.
Yeah, I got your question. I just thought maybe licensing to play the game, but the actual machines
Permit
themselves.
to happen, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if there's anything
suspect you're right.
I can check on for that. The equipment is done through us, but I'm not sure of your.
Yeah,
Because we don't license the powerball machine.
right. I was going to say, but they're not at taverns and restaurants, but I don't know if they are or not.
Oh, yeah, we do have.
They are?
We
Yes,
have
so
some.
I know. See, I hesitated to say that, but, all right. Bill? did you-
Yeah, I guess I am going to say something. There were 2 studies done regarding Keno players, one out of Mount Auburn, another one done by Gemini Research out of New York, that concluded that people that play Keno, it actually fosters addiction. And I say that only because, we've got a meth problem here in Merrimack, and I got the chief right over here to back me up. We also have a heroin problem going on, not just here in New Hampshire, but plaguing other communities here in the United States. And I do not feel comfortable providing a game of chance that, quite honestly, it's a regressive tax. It is a poor form of collecting revenues, no matter how you could put a bow on this, how this is funding education. This is a regressive form of funding education. It's not the right thing to be funding education for, and you're feeding into somebody's addiction that, quite honestly, we're having a tough time dealing with chemical addictions in this community. It's another thing to be dealing with somebody's gambling addiction. And I'm very reticent to have Keno come into this particular community where we have worked hard establishing ourselves as one of the best places to live in the United States. We have the best community policing here in the United States. And I certainly don't want to be taxing, my friends here wearing the badge over here, with additional problems where, we are not limiting them to restaurants. Now you're talking about putting them into convenience stores. One of the problems that they've had down in Massachusetts was lines forming in conveniencing stores just so they could play their Keno slips. Look along the border. I did a project several years ago where I had to travel along the border looking at stores in New Hampshire and looking at Massachusetts. And it was beautiful, because the stores in Massachusetts all had the Keno parlors, and then you just crossed the line, and all the convenience stores had all the cheap cigarettes, and that's what they were doing. They were leaving the Keno stores to go to Massachusetts to get their butts, to get their Mountain Dew, to come back to the other store to play their Keno slips. It's not the type of thing that I want going on in my community here in Merrimack. And if people want to accuse me of being part of the morality police, well, so be it. Okay, I'm not going to begrudge people for playing the lottery. I'm not going to begrudge people to go down to Foxwood, spend a couple of bucks. But Keno attracts the wrong kind of economic development that these people here have worked hard in this particular community. You know, to say that, you know, it's going to benefit a retail establishment, it's going to create hospitality. Like you're talking about how sales are up 20% in communities, you know, in the 45 establishments. You know, that's all well and good, but I can tell you right now, you know, people come to Merrimack whether they're going to the Homestead or Hot Rides or down to the Common Man. They're going there because they want the conversation. They're going down there for the food, and they're going down there to catch whoever's playing acoustic guitar down there. Okay, you know, and like I said, I may be in the minority on this, but the way that the tax has been built into this type of game is just, it's regressive, and it's just a wrong way to collect money for a type of benefit that we provide citizens here in New Hampshire. And you know, it's worse than slots, and it's probably much less than playing a Powerball ticket. You know, I just, for me personally, have a hard time wanting that type of game in our community, because I think it impacts. I really think in the long run, it impacts the quality of life. It impacts some of the good work that this community has done to make Merrimack one of the best places to live in the United States. And I apologize if I'm coming in with a full head of steam, but you know, there's a reason why when I look at SB 191, you know, any town can operate. You know, the legislative body may vote. It should be legislative intent. The community should be outreaching to the lottery saying, "Can you talk to us?" It shouldn't be the lottery coming to us and telling us we got this great game. Respectfully. Communities should be outreaching to you, and you should be targeting communities that are considering Keno. I don't want to say I'm offended. Anybody that wants to come to this community to present testimony, they're more than welcome to do it. But there's a reason why the law was written. If communities want this particular game, it's an enabling legislation. If the communities want it, they should be outreaching to the New Hampshire Lottery and asking them to come and present. In the end of the day, it's not the type of thing that I want to see in this community. I may be in the minority, and that's fine. But there are better things going on in our community that are attracting people and spending their money, as opposed to coming in and dropping $1 so they could pick 10 numbers. So,
all right, well, thanks, Bill. For me, I'll tell you, it's something that if it were to be put forward, I would expect it to go to town vote, and the town would decide on that. I submit that 5 to 10% of Americans have addictive personalities, so no matter what you do, they'll have addictive personalities, and they have to deal with those.
I concede the point, Mr. Chairman.
So I think, for me, I've never played Keno. I don't think I ever will play Keno, because I don't like blowing my money like that. And so I don't know. I mean, if 7 establishments out of 23 or 28 are interested in it, and it enhances their business, we were the first state to have the lottery. I think that's what you had suggested. And it goes on all over. So it's, you know, I don't buy into that. It's a freedom thing for me, and ultimately I recognize the problems and when the state does sanction it like they're doing, I don't know if 1% is enough, but they should dedicate money. Cigarette tax should go to education and rehabilitation on demand and health costs, all those things. And they don't do that. They roll it into the general fund and use it for whatever they're going to do.
Well, they're talking, you know, the way that I understand it, 5% of all revenues go directly to people with addiction disorders as it relates to gambling. If you want to concede the point, then that's not enough.
Well, I don't know if it is or not. It's not my discussion.
But I understand it's not enough, but I'm just saying if
I think the point is that the morality place that you had suggested, I get it, but I'm just, you know, if somebody wants it to go forward, I think it should go to the ballot and they would decide. And I think Peter was next, and then Jackie.
I think Tom.
And Tom.
This conversation obviously it's going to continue, but I'd like to see if there are businesses in town, I'd like to see those folks. Let's just put this back on the agenda at some point. Or if they want to, I'd want to hear from the businesses and obviously the residents of this town. But also, maybe we need to charge the town manager with assigning someone to do a little homework or research find out some of the pros and cons, whether it's the Gaming Commission in Massachusetts or it's law enforcement down there, to say, what have you seen? What's the problems? What's good? What's bad? And I'd love to have that information before we certainly made any decision if we were even going to do that. So that's I think the more information, the better.
Yep. Thanks,
And
Peter.
if I just could, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to begrudge putting it on the ballot, because I agree with you. Okay? I would never deny the people of this community the opportunity to vote on it. But I feel the community needs to know how I feel about it.
Yep. No, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jackie, do you have something?
Yeah. I guess my quarrel has always been that the state is running this. And it's an entity, an authority, an entity that people look up to. And it's okay to gamble. Well, I don't mind a destination place where people might be able to afford to drop a little bit, like the Mount Washington or something. But I've seen like pinball machines or whatever you call them. What do you call them? Slot machines.
Slot machines.
They are probably one of the more disgusting things ever invented. You just keep putting your money in. It's ridiculous. And I'd hate to see that in Merrimack, that kind of thing. And that is just a little bit more sophisticated version. I don't mind a game of skill. I'm a bridge player. You can't drag me away from a bridge table. But I would be against having it in town, but I would be okay with putting it on the ballot.
Thanks, Jackie. Tom?
So just a quick question. So I don't think we have full-time kindergarten in Merrimack, do we?
No, but I know they've been talking
They're going to
about
talk about it, and I believe it's going to be on the warrant.
Right.
This-
So what
this-
if
this spring.
we don't have that full-time kindergarten? Where does those funds go? If we decide to bring it into town.
So whether you have it in your town or not, it is directly related to having the full-time kindergarten. So if you don't have full-time kindergarten, the funds from Keno, if you have it or not, will not be allocated to you. If you have full-time kindergarten and you don't have Keno, you do have the funds allocated.
So the businesses would
Yes.
would still get their 8%.
Yep, the businesses still get their funds. So, and just to clarify, my role here is just to provide as much information as possible. I mean, every day as we sell the lottery, we get so excited to see people win, and we do see cases that we're like, well, we're not sure if they're spending their last dollar or something, and it does tug at our heartstrings. But we just want to feel that we're doing the best that we can do, is inform and share and support. And the same thing too with any cigarettes or anything like that. I'm like, why don't we have a tax go into that? So just know from our standpoint that we really were asked to do this, and we really just want to do the best we can, answer any questions, provide as much information, and have you and the people decide if this is something for your community, and to know all the benefits, and certainly hear from the retailers, the people. Look at, Nashua has already approved it, so, does that impact you if you don't have it, or, will it help you if you did have it because that's so close? I don't know, it's just something that, you can look into.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Anything further? Linda, is Josephine your mother-in-law?
Joanne is my
okay.
mother-in-law.
I
Yep,
don't
Joanne
know.
and Paul.
I don't know
yeah.
your husband. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All
And
right. I do have just a little PowerPoint I'll leave for just a little bit of information if you guys want to look at it.
Please.
you can just leave it, Paul. Yeah. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
great week.
All right. Next under appointments is councils to, per, let me put these, I don't know why I fight these glasses. Per the annual review with the Technology Committee, per the Town of Merrimack Charter, Article Section 6-6, at least annually, there should be a review with the Technology Committee. This agenda item is to highlight the committee's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns the council should know or could act upon. And Paul, is it Mondu? Yeah. Hi, Paul. I didn't know, I thought I had your last name, I just wasn't sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, it's for you guys.
Yep.
It'll be posted anyway. We'll post it on the website after.
Great.
So you said it already. I'm Paul Moldu. I'm now the chairman of the committee. So, yeah, we just got that. Because we had one of our members resign. So this, from what I understand, there hasn't been a review in a while. I don't know when the last one was done, so some of this stuff you might have seen already, because I'm going to go over some topics that were on a list that was presented to me when I took over, and there's an awful lot of stuff on there from several years back, right? And I don't know how far the council's been advised of all this stuff. So we're just going to go through it, and these are just bullet items, and I'm going to talk to them, all right? Because I wanted to get, I didn't want to burden you with all, tons and tons of slides.
Paul, what I would say is you are the first person that actually came with something in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We've always gotten an update, but
Well, that's just force of habit.
Fair enough. So thank you. Appreciate this. Thank you.
Okay, this is what I'm going to want to talk about, touch, and because we haven't been here, and they keep telling me this, the other committee members keep telling me we haven't been here for quite a while. So the authority, the committee basics for the town itself. So we just go review it. All of you should know this, but there's a lot of others that probably don't. Right? So we're going to go over that, and then some of the achievements that I have seen from Chuck and our IT person, right, for the town, and some issues and things that I want, that the committee wants to address, some resolutions that have been done, and some things that we need to look at as a town, right? All right, so page down. I'll go. Page down. No. It's not my computer. Yeah, there we go. The basics, right? The budget authority. We're just going to review this a little bit and really briefly. The committee has no budget authority, and the council knows that. So no money can be spent on our part. We're just an advisory to the town. The statutory authority is there's no statute authority, which means that the committee can only review and recommend solutions. So again, we're to provide resources and give our thoughts on things, on what's going on with the town and the infrastructure. The charge from the town, well, this is a little bit lengthy, but they said that I should really put this in there, because I wasn't going to put it in there. But to provide ongoing assessment of the town to the town council, which we haven't done, right? And to use the technology in both software and hardware as it is used today in looking into the future. And there's a lot of things that we have done, and there's a lot of things that need to be done within the town. The assessments may be broken down to the committees as it sees fit. And so we have the hardware and the hardware allocations, the software allocations, and recommendations on how we should move forward with the town, and that would come out of the committee. And the committee is here to recommend on things, and if the town wants to do it, then we would put some plans together, and it would be accomplished by the IT personnel of the town. Specific areas which came from the town, I guess several years ago, I guess now, because it was added, from what I understand, is that the committee wanted us to focus on the networking, the licenses, the compliance, the website utilizations, the hardware, and all of the power utilizations within the town. Committee also shall look at the department heads, and I did talk to a few people just not that long ago, and a few of them are sitting right here. And I talked to some others on some topics that were open items for quite a while. So we're looking at that stuff, and then the committee should promote the town businesses, right? They have to promote the town businesses. So there has been some achievements from what I have seen in all of the. I went back and reviewed all of the minutes and all the notes from previous meetings of the committee, and tried to bring forth some of these things in more of a formal presentation for the council and for the town. The achievements were, we do know, and I know the town council here knows, but we did get an assistant for Chuck. And Chuck is our main IT do-everything guy, right? He does just about everything. And he's here all the time, right? But we got Tim Hutchinson, which is he's been hired part-time, and he helps Chuck with the daily operations. So between 20 and 25 hours or so a week, he comes in here to help Chuck with that, with all of the daily operations. Facility security. There has been some improvement and some movement in the facility. I understand that in the past there was no locked rooms. It was easy to get into certain parts of the building. The computer rooms were left wide open and all of this stuff. So there has been some movement on that, and you can see them on the doors. They have the RFID card readers, and they have cards and their access. That gives them the access to the specific areas, right? Everybody's shaking their head. Yep. Okay. So that's definitely been an improvement on the security. So that is a big thing, right? Limited access to your main servers and your email systems and things like that. That's a very big issue. So that helped an awful lot. So it cuts down on the access to certain areas within the town. Actually, within this facility is the biggest one. The email security, the town is running Microsoft Exchange, so that is a proprietary, and everybody knows what Microsoft Exchange is, or Microsoft, right? That's the email system of the town. And the server software has been updated, and it's continuously being updated, and all security patches have been performed. So we're compliant with everything from Microsoft on all of the servers, and that goes along not with just the Exchange servers, but the file servers, which hosts all of your other services, have been upgraded and patched and whatever. And so those are things that are done on a regular basis. And I can tell you this from experience: Microsoft comes out with patches the second Tuesday of every month. All right, so this is an ongoing thing, and some of them are very, very in depth, and there's really some openings that they keep finding, right? Because people always, it's everywhere, and we'll talk about this in a minute. Everybody's trying to get into your networks. Everybody's trying to hack your machines. Your servers are not. They're not rock solid here. They need some protection, right? There is some threat protection software that's being run, but it's not efficient. Chuck has done that. He has done it on his own initiative. He did put some software in place on the servers, and it monitors all the access, especially the email systems, which is the biggest intrusion point, is our email service. He does that, but unfortunately it's not a fully automated system, so there's still a lot of hands-on activity that needs to be done there. And that still concerns us on the committee, and from my background, it concerns me a lot. There's too much that has to be done manually still within the town. But I can say that Chuck has been very up on it. In fact, just the other day, I saw something go out to all the town employees saying that there's suspicious email coming in. He saw it on the servers. It was caught by our systems, and some of you probably got that email message, right? Don't open the the attachments or whatever, because they are trying to get in. So he's been very proactive on that. But he, in all fairness, yes, he's done an awesome job, and I can't say anything else about Chuck. He's done an awesome job for the town. But some of this stuff can be automated to a more proficient manner, and notices can go out and things like that automatically, and that's what we've got to get to. So this goes into the issues and the issues and what we have going on right now, right? Open committee position, right? Dustin resigned his position within the council, so we're down a member. So what that really makes a problem, there's only 6 positions on the council. So if you're down a member and somebody's sick or something, you got a problem, and we can't have a quorum. So we have a problem, right? And fortunately, I've kind of pushed a little bit, and we've gotten several meetings in this year, right? And December, we got one in, and then this last, beginning of the first week of January, we had a meeting. We didn't have a quorum, but I says we're going to have one next week, and then we had a quorum. So we did get that accomplished, and we're going to keep that up. The committees agreed that we will keep that up, and we will have more frequent meetings as warranted, right? We have scheduled already for the next couple of months. If it's not needed, then we won't have the meeting, right? So that's just one thing. But we do need another member for the team. That does put us in a bind. So it's on the town website already. It's just for everybody here to be aware that we need somebody with a computer background, right? With some IT background, and so we need that. Now, there's a lot of discussions. This next bullet is something that's I've seen on so many minutes and going back several years about open source software. All right? Open source software versus the COTS software. For COTS software, I mean off-the-shelf stuff, which is proprietary and you have to pay for. That's what COTS is, right? The state has been moving to, they've been doing a lot of this with the open source software, but in many situations it does not, it just doesn't meet the requirements of your town and of all of the different departments within the town. Chuck has done a good job. He's already done this. And the one thing I want to say is that it's been on the minutes for quite a while, for a year or so, saying that we want to do it, that the committee wanted to have the town do a pilot program. No, we kind of squashed that this last meeting, right? Because it's not needed. Chuck has already done, and he has already worked on all the public-facing computers within the building and in different areas, the kiosk-type systems and all of those. He's put open office on those. I believe what he has told me, and these guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the cruisers have open source, open office on them now also. So that, at least that's what I understand from Chuck. So that is basically all that we can do without getting ourselves into trouble. Microsoft is the, since we have Microsoft servers, we have Microsoft Exchange servers for our email system. Open source software in the Open Office does not support those type of mail systems. So, yeah, you can send and receive mail on them, but you can't do any collaboration, which is, sharing of calendars, sharing of email lists, those type of things, which all of the departments use all the time. We even use it on the committee, right? And you guys use it. So that is not feasible for the town. what we have to do is we have to continue with the Microsoft Office products. So the which has, it has Outlook in it, which is, it can do what's called MAPI, which is a form of communications on the servers. So some people know what that is, but that permits our collaboration and our shared calendars and shared emails, email lists and things like that. Without that function, you'd really be hurting. That'd be a serious problem. So we decided that there is no need to go into some kind of a pilot, because everything that is out there now has been done for what we can do. All right, so the open source software it's been done to extent. The Microsoft Office licensing, that is not a big issue, and I brought that up to the committee just this last meeting. It's not as big issue as it sounds. It is an expensive ticket item, but you don't have to upgrade all systems at the same time. Microsoft itself, as a corporation, does not stop using or stop supporting their other versions, their prior versions, for years. Right? So, and they make them all upward compatible. Now, from what Chuck is saying, we already have purchased licenses for all of our systems up through Office 2016, which is the current version of Office. So that should cover you for the next few years. In addition to that, your systems, from what I saw, and Chuck took me around, from what I saw is that you're still running in a lot of situations under Office 2010. So you have some wiggle room there. You can upgrade systems, and then you still have all of that to work with. So that's a good thing, because now you had something and he brought the budget through, and I couldn't find it. But the budget was presented to us, and there was like $80,000 for software, and a big chunk of that was Microsoft software. But that is not a yearly total. That just isn't. So I don't know where that whole figure came from, but it's not. Again, you can go several years, and you can upgrade your systems, periodically and over time, and they're compatible with each other. So that whole thing is the open source software. It's done as much as it can be done, and we're staying with the Microsoft Office, which will make a lot of people happy. We need all of that, email servers and all of that stuff. So that's the biggest thing on that. Any questions on that one? Because I think I've talked more than enough on that. You're okay. Everybody's shaking their head yes and no. Yeah. So everybody agrees. Here's some issues I'll say the committee, but that I brought up from some of the things, and we talked about this at the last committee meeting, and I think we talked about it in December also. The creation of an inventory list, it's ongoing. Chuck and with Tim now, they've been doing their inventory with the all of the hardware, and of course he got all of his software in place and all of that, so he's got a fairly decent handle on that. It just has to be more formatted and put into sort of a report format, right? So that we know what the town actually has. From what I understand with this inventory, and he told me the other night, is that he has several more file servers coming in. They're HP file servers to replace some of the older ones that are in the building. So that's part of the inventory process. This is a big one. The next bullet item is documentation on the operation of the facilities and of the service and of all of the software and all of the buildings. That doesn't exist. All right, so if something happens to Chuck, you got a problem. The town has a problem. Even if he's sick and something goes down, that's a potential right there. Some of your systems are protected. Your card readers for the credit cards, things like that. That's all done by the credit card companies. Those are maintained. You have some other systems in town that are maintained by the vendor. That's okay. But our everyday stuff, our exchange servers, the stuff that's on the secretaries and behind the desk over here, some of their software and stuff, there's no procedural things on that. If something happens to our servers downstairs, we got a problem too. Go ahead.
You're making a good point here. So when you say, what physically, or what is there a piece of equipment or something that needs to we need to have that documentation and recovery procedure?
Yes. I'm coming to that.
Okay, no, I'm just kind of
no. Well, there's some things that I'd like to talk with the council with, right? And we did talk about it at our last meeting, and it's in our meeting notes about it too. We did. It's in there. So I'm not bringing up anything new without the council, right? So the documentation, there's some thoughts out there. We don't want to spend a lot of money, and we know that. We're trying to keep the budget down, right, and keep everything reasonable. There is some free software out there. We talked about it the other day, that we can accomplish some of this. That'll do an inventory of your system. It'll go out and pull all your. It'll at least give you all your hardware stuff. And Chuck has a fairly decent handle on the software stuff. But there's some things where there's no. That goes down with the last large bullet is the continuity and security stuff. There's no way right now, today, of Chuck knowing that a server is down in the building unless he happens to log in or he sees something out of the ordinary from a router or from the communications or something. There's no notices. There's no alerts. There's nothing like that that's being done right now. So that's something we need to look at. There is some thoughts on it. I have some thoughts on it, and we're going to do that at our next meeting too. Is that we're going to look at some again, open source software that performs this well. I've used some stuff on some small companies that I manage. So there's things out there that will do this alerting and help. Again, for what I said earlier was there's too much manual interaction with everything here in town. It shouldn't take Chuck that long to do all of his daily operations. It really shouldn't. All right, so we've got to come up with some better ways of doing that. So that's, and I'm moving on because I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on that last bullet. The backup and the data recovery, yeah, well, we do have it, sort of, kind of. And I already said something, said some of your software vendors update and maintain their own software systems and all of that stuff. So they're backed up. We do have a backup. From what I read in all of the notes from previous meetings, is that originally all the backups were brought to his house. They're not done like that anymore. They're in a lock safe. They're in a fireproof safe, and they're in one of the other buildings. I think he said a police station, but I'm not sure. But they're not. It's not here where it would be a problem, and it's not at his house either, because it's just too hard to get to. The other thing on the backup solutions is it's really still not fully automated again. This stuff should not. It should do it. It should do it for you. And yeah, okay, if you're going to move your stuff across to other facilities, that's okay. But you can do this over the wire. And he does back up systems from over the wire too. So The example is the fire department server is backed up all the time, from what I understand. And there's issues with that, and I'll address that too. But there's ways of doing this. It's just, again, it's just not efficient, right? And we've got to work on that to get the town up into the 21st century, right? And I'm going to say that because it's true. Some of this stuff is old technology, and we've got to deal with it. And unfortunately, it may cost. There may be some costs involved, but we would come through with something and we would say, hey, this is what we looked at, this is what it may cost, this is what we could do for alternatives, and that would come back to the council. And so that would be just another observation on our part. So the backups are still lacking. They are in a fireproof safe, but that's still we don't think that's sufficient. There needs to be more done on that. The big thing here now is the system continuity and security assessments. There was from what Chuck told me when I could get out of him, is that many years ago, several years ago, there was a very brief security assessment for an intrusion detection by some college student or something that did it for a project. It was a very top level thing. It didn't go into all of your systems. It didn't try to break in through all of your firewalls. It didn't try to get into your servers. That was never done. This is a very big concern nowadays. Everybody's faced with this. Everybody tries to break everything, right? And you see that in the news all the time. They just plan on it, and there's people that do this 24 hours a day. They'll just try to break the systems. More formal security assessment really is advisable at this time. So what we would like to do is start looking around, with permission, and so start looking around for alternatives and different ways of accomplishing this. There's been suggestions. Yes, we have a lot of technical colleges in the area, in New Hampshire. So they are very good at this. There's they have the cyber days and everything else where they do this. They try to attack the government, right?
Russia.
Yeah, the Cyber Week is next week, or it's soon, because I have another organization that I deal with that does Cyber Week, right? And they try to break into things. But so maybe we can get something like that, and it wouldn't cost us, right? And if not, maybe there's some alternatives of a smaller company that we could get that wouldn't cost us a lot. So that's something that we want to pursue in coming forth to the council, to be able to present that and say, this is what we found, and this is what, these are our best options, and here's our alternatives, right? So that's a big thing. This is a very big issue that I can see. Other items of interest here, and those are the topics. I didn't want to go on all night. There's so much, right? From looking over all the notes, there's pages of it, and we just voted on just getting rid of those and kind of starting over, all right? So there's just too much. So the other item of interest is there's facilities that have other servers in them. The main servers are here in this building, across the hall, and they are real file servers in racks and power supplies, all of that good stuff. The concern with, I know I talked to the fire chief here, Chief Courier, and I talked to a few others, the building committee, a few others. I went out after I talked to him because I just happened to be at the fire station. is that there's other servers around town that don't seem to ever be touched. Right? Chuck has assured me that he does log into them all the time and does remote stuff from remotely, but that's not sufficient. That's really something that we have to work on the process of possibly, even if it's a 1 month, hey, we got to go and touch the servers, we got to see what's going on with them. Got to make sure that everything's running, you know, all of the disk drives are healthy, all of this stuff. Now that may come into play if we put some other software into place, right, from what I was talking about before. But with still, there's got to be periodic hands-on on the machines. There just has to be. Now the reason for, and I totally understand and I agree, the reason for having these servers at different locations is we are a Microsoft house, all right? We run Microsoft systems here, so that means when people and employees log in, they have to be authenticated. So you get your username, your password, all of that. It comes off of what's called a domain controller, and those domain controllers sit here, but the redundant domain controller, like in the case of the fire department, is sitting over at the fire department. All right, now that is a valid use of that server, because if a link goes down between here and there, without that server there, nobody would be able to log in and do any work. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to talk back to the service here, but you can do that afterwards, and you can get your data over afterwards. So the question about service in the other buildings, it's a valid point, and it's also a valid solution for redundancy within the system, within the network, is to have these there in case one of the links go down. The other problem is the links between some of the facilities are not up to par. But that's another issue that has to be looked at and addressed. Right? We got fiber between some of our buildings here, but not all of them. I know the DPW, the other two fire stations. I don't even think the library has fiber link, but they're all up on Comcast through a VPN or dial-up modems or whatever. And that, how can you do business like that nowadays? You really can't. Okay, so these are things that we want to look into for the town. We just want to say the first thing was the last slide was the system continuity and security assessment. We want to go out and look for solutions for you guys. All right, so we wanted to bring it to the council and say, you know, because we're supposed to bring it to you, which they haven't done. We want to come out and say, hey, we're going to go look at these things, and then we'll come back with some recommendations for you. The other thing is probably another backup strategy. And then the last thing would be maybe we need to look at some of our infrastructure. But I think the other things we need to focus on a little bit more first, the security stuff.
Right. Thank you, Paul. I think what I'd really like to see is we had spoken about security previously. I don't know if it was the last meeting that the technology committee came forward or if it was another get-together. But we talked about cloud storage and all this and how absolutely secure that was. And we were going to be trying to get away from servers. I don't know if it was all of them or much of them or whatever. But what I'd like to see is, well, first a contingency, because Chuck is a wealth of knowledge and his institutional knowledge, it's pretty deep. But I'd like to be confident that there is contingency plans and so on in place. And that's something that I'm sure Chuck would want the committee to work to, and I do. But as well the security aspects of the whole thing. And so I'd like the committee, if you have a proposal to make, Chuck can come in and talk to Eileen, can come talk to us and let us know what he thinks we should do. Because I don't know a lot about. I use the heck out of technology. I don't know a lot about it though.
Yeah. Well, there's a few of us out there that do know. So It's good. There's a few of us on there that are very knowledgeable in
Right.
it, so it helps. And it's going to help the town, and that's why we're there.
No, I appreciate
With
that.
Chuck, there is some things that, and it was mentioned in a few of our notes that I went back, whatever's posted on the website, and he should get some additional formal training. So I don't know if you can do that or not, because he should take some Microsoft training, he should take some other training, maybe even some Cisco training, but things like that.
Sure, no, thank you. Eileen?
I'm sorry. I don't profess to know a lot about technology, and I so appreciate you and your committee for everything that you do. We do really need to be careful with using individuals' names.
Oh,
I
I'm
know
sorry,
there's only
yeah.
2 people
the
because it
public.
sounds like, you're, you can talk about the department or whatever, but I would prefer that you didn't,
That's
because there's
fine.
only one guy.
Yeah,
So,
he's the only one guy.
yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. But
You're welcome.
we
That's
really
not a
do,
problem.
we really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Jackie, did you have something?
Yes, I did. Again, I don't know much about this either.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry. I was wondering, you mentioned fiber optics, that there is some in town. Now, who puts that up? Who brings it to town?
A lot of it is Comcast, and then there's other, I don't know who's the contractor in this town.
Paul
Right now.
knows.
We have direct fiber link between this building. We own the fiber link
You do,
between this
okay.
building and wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
We have looked at
Oh,
contracting
you go
with.
down to wastewater?
Yes, we have looked at other buildings contracting it through Comcast. As a matter of fact, we have a active process right now with Comcast to try to get fiber into some of our other buildings.
And does that interconnect?
It would interconnect, yes.
Yeah. And there's interest within the town also to having an ability to archive and an ability to have clear communication. And I've been told that a fiber optics is the way to do that.
Yeah. That is the best route right now, today. Larger companies use other things, but that's the, I said that's the least expensive for you guys, I would think, fiber. The connectivity is an issue if you're gonna do over the links, right? If you do your backups and things like that over the links, then that does become an issue. So between these buildings right here, you've got it, all right? So you've got some fiber in town, right, Paul?
Yeah.
So you've got some fiber in town, and that's okay, but there's other parts of the environment here that, yeah, really lacking.
For example, it could be helpful to have the new garage hooked up as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to thank you so sincerely. I'm just astonished at how dedicated you guys are.
Yes. no,
Thank you very
absolutely.
much.
Thank you, Jackie. Peter?
Yeah, and I think that what the technology committee is looking for is maybe their marching orders. Do they need formal permission from the council, as I guess a point of order, to say, hey, we're going to go out and look around for people that do security assessments, and we're going to give you options and so forth? Do they need a formal, a motion on that to have permission to do that?
I think that's actually in the charge as it stands anyhow, but Eileen?
I wasn't sure on that. I don't think we were sure on that.
I think the simplest method by which that you could deal with that would be to speak to me about it. Many of these things aren't high-cost items. You're pursuing different kinds of things. I would be happy to listen to those things with you, with Chuck, and if everybody concurs, we could bring it to the council if you wanted. But
meetings.
I didn't mean to say Chuck. I meant the guy, the IT guy.
Yeah,
so-
you said it too. This time.
Too late. Can't take
Yeah,
it
we
back.
all-
Yeah.
yeah.
Oops. So I think that would be the most efficient way, because you only come here once a year usually. So it would probably be
May not.
best.
We may come more.
It would probably be best for you to come and meet with me, because I'm pretty amenable to any of the things that you're talking about.
Okay,
Okay?
sounds good.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say, Mr. Mondy, thank you so much for chairing the committee, you and the members, for your proficiency, your expertise, your passion. Certainly came through in the presentation tonight, and I certainly want to thank you for that. But I would encourage you, if you feel that there's a need, and during your examination and talking with the technology department, you can come back to us at any time and say, you know, the technology committee would like to recommend that you pursue such and such, and then, you know, we can work with Eileen and the technology department to figure out what we need to do to make those things happen. I think it's difficult here on, you know, January 25th, where we're going to finalize our budget on the 29th, and this, I mean, we could always make changes at the last minute if we really wanted to, but I think, you know, for stuff moving in the future, if you're looking for us to allocate dollars in our budget to accomplish some of the things that you feel we're weak or deficient, would certainly like to hear it sooner than later.
We would come to you.
I appreciate it.
We would, definitely, and
Okay.
I'd plan on it. Yeah.
Right, no, and as Eileen suggested, it would be good to have you and Chuck sit down with her on
Absolutely.
issues that you find to be very
You
important.
did it.
Yep.
Thank you again, appreciate it.
All
All right,
right,
Paul.
thank you.
Thank you so
Paul.
very much. We appreciate it. All right, next item on the agenda is a public hearing. Consideration, council will hold a public hearing to consider the acceptance of recommended changes to chapters A 198, the Merrimack Town Code pursuant to Charter Article 5. I'm going to open the public hearing at 8:56. Paul, do you want to speak to them?
Just that we made the formatting changes that were requested at the last meeting. Also, basically listened to the N-shores and us-shores and made those changes, and the commas and crossing out. So everything that the council asked us to do at the last meeting has been brought forward to this meeting. The A198 and administrative code, and for those at home, A198 is the administrative code for the departments throughout the town of Merrimack.
Thank you, Paul. I had a real quick, Eileen, go ahead, sorry.
I just wanted to let you know that Becky was suggesting that we bring in a can of Ensure so that we could put it on the table so that everybody would remember.
She's a funny girl.
She's a funny girl. Yeah.
She's a character.
It's funnier when she said it.
It's because of the expressions and all. On page 12 of 26, do we actually have an economic development division? Or is it just something that,
Those are duties that are assigned to the community development director.
okay,
He is the economic
He's the
development
division.
division.
okay. It just seemed
Correct.
strange.
Yes.
I'm not asking for any
Yes.
changes, just with,
Yeah,
okay,
he is the economic
he is it.
development division.
Very good. Thank you. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments, questions? We're all set here. If anybody would like to address the council on this, what do I want to say? Warden, this code, check code A198, please come to the mic. I did, as soon as I started. I just wanted to have a couple minutes in between. And see, nobody's coming to the mic to speak on this. I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:58.
Mr. Chairman, move Chapter A198 to the consent agenda.
Second?
Motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Councilor Albert. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. 5-0-0. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, legislative updates from state representatives. I see none tonight. Town manager's report.
I have nothing.
That's just wonderful. I saw, by the way, I think he was a Boy Scout or something. The father came to pick the guy up just about 10 of 9, and they had to get in trouble for something. But anyhow, sorry. Consent agenda. The consent agenda has 4 items, changes to chapters, 4 chapters, and they have to be made individually, even though it's a consent agenda. So if anybody would like to move.
Mr. Chairman, move Chapter 34 to engrossment.
Second?
Motion by Council Boyd, second by Pete Albert. Further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Mr. Chairman, move Chapter 66 to engrossment.
Second?
Motion, motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Peter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Eileen's having an apoplectic with my use of the word engrossment.
I'm definitely not apoplectic, but I didn't know what that meant. I was
Engrossment means to enact,
Oh, okay.
to print. Okay. I'm sorry.
All right.
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
There's another 15 seconds of time going through.
Mr. Chairman, move Chapter 145 to engrossment.
Motion by Council Boyd,
Second?
second by Peter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Mr. Chairman, move Chapter 180 to engrossment.
Motion by Council Boyd. Second. Seconded by Tom Thornton. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. Old business. Under old business, consideration of changes to, consider acceptance of recommended changes to chapters 92, amusement devices of the Merrimack Town Code pursuant to Charter Article 5. There's some changes that came through here. Those were made. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, at the last meeting, it was asked about a definition for games of chance. A game of chance is a game whose outcome is strongly influenced by the randomization device and upon which contestants may choose to risk money or anything of monetary value upon a future contingent event not under one's control or influence, upon an agreement or an understanding that something of value will be received in the event of a certain outcome. Common devices used include dice, spinning tops, playing cards, roulette wheels, and or numbered balls drawn from a container. That definition has been vetted by town council, and we have brought that forward as what the definition of game of chance is.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Is there any further discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman, move Chapter 92 to a public hearing.
Second?
Motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Councilor Albert to move. Pardon me?
I thought this never was in a public
It
hearing
wasn't
because
a public hearing, we moved it, this got moved forward as old business instead of consent because of that definition. We already did.
You're right,
So
Paul.
the
I
public hearing was
apologize.
held and this didn't change
Yeah.
it, it was just a definition.
It was just a
I'm sorry.
definition.
I apologize. Mr. Chairman, move Chapter, I withdraw my motion and amended to have it be move Chapter 92 to engrossment.
Motion by Councilor Boyd, seconded by Tom Thornton. Any
Okay.
further discussion? Peter?
And I'm thinking about this in this chapter, and we've just listened to Keno, and I guess we'll revisit it if things change with Keno, I take it. With some of the wording here in this chapter, that's all.
Yes, in some of the wording in that chapter, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'll
Not
leave
the
it as a-
definition, but in the chapter itself, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. 500. Okay, next on the agenda is to council to consider an option of participating in the contribution assurance program for the next three coverage period years, from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2022 for Primex's property and liability program. Paul?
Thank you.
All
Yes,
right,
you
Lynn?
can.
Okay, at the last meeting, there was some confusion because we presented you with a proposal for two of the elements of, or the two of the different kinds of insurance that we get from Primex, who's our property and liability and workers' comp carrier. And they were basically capping the rate that they could increase in both programs. It showed on the front page. Since that time, we have found that the property and liability caps are still being offered to us, and I think they're at 7%. But the workers' comp caps are not being offered to us. So it was appropriate that only the property and liability document be included with the agenda for you to sign, but the definition really hadn't been updated. So, and the reason for us not being allowed to participate in the CAP program is because of our very high claims that we've had over the past 3 years in workers' comp.
Great. Anybody have any questions? I have a question. Are we supposed to take this vote to take this off the table, or do we just take it off the table?
It's old business. It hasn't been tabled. Oh, yeah, we have to take, I apologize. Yes, you have to take it off the table.
Then I'll accept that motion first, if I could.
Mr. Chairman, move to take old business item 2 off the table.
If there's a second?
Second.
Second, motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Peter, to remove from the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. 5-0-0. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Merrimack Town Council approve participation in the contribution
Excuse me,
assurance.
Bill. Sorry. Oh, you have that right there? Does he have that?
Yes, it's
I didn't know if you were reading that. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was going to do that. It's okay.
That's what you were in the middle of?
Just trying to get there. I'll start over, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
Is he being fresh?
He's being an overachiever.
I'm not being an overachiever.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you weren't wasting your time, so I apologize.
No, not a problem, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Merrimack Town Council resolve to hereby accept the offer of the New Hampshire Public Risk Management Exchange, a.k.a. Primex, to enter into its property liability contribution insurance program as of the date of the adoption of this resolution, which would be tonight. Is that correct? Okay. And to be contractually bound to all the terms and conditions of Primex Risk Management Pool membership during the term of the Property and Liability Contribution Assurance Program, CAP. The coverage provided by Primex in each year of membership shall be as then set forth in the coverage documents of Primex. And that furthermore, that the chairman attests that the foregoing is a true copy of the resolution of the governing board of the town of Merrimack as adopted on this particular date.
Motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Tom Thornton. Bill, would you like to speak to your motion?
It speaks for itself, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anything further? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0. Thank you, Bill. Next, under new business, item number 1, committee appointments. Consider the following individuals: Chip Pollard to the Heritage Commission as a full member, and Rod Buckley to the Zoning Board of Adjustment as an alternate member. Rod Buckley had to come in twice for an interview, which he finished up tonight, and he's been recommended to move forward. So neither are here for swearing in, but we need a vote to bring them on board.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town council appoint Chip Pollard to the Heritage Commission as a full member and Rod Buckley as an alternate member to the Zoning Board of Adjustment pursuant to Charter Article 4-8.
Thank you, Bill. Motion by Councilor Boyd, seconded by Pete. Any further discussion?
Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Rod, for stepping up to serve the community.
Absolutely. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0.
Mr. Chair, in your packet here, the forms that the council could sign.
Yeah, they're going around now. Yep. Thanks, Paul. I don't know, Mike, you are here. Next on the agenda, waiting patiently, is Mike Malzone to discuss with the council the Planning and Zoning Board's public and residential noticing.
Mr. Chairman, move to table to an uncertain date.
Which is right now. And I will be quick for you all.
Good
Thank
evening,
you. Mike Malzone, 80 East Chamberlain Road.
Thanks for
Merrimack,
waiting.
New Hampshire.
You know, I'm kidding, Mike, right?
I do, of course I do. Thanks a lot for getting me on the agenda tonight. We have a lot of development that will be going on in town in the next couple of years. we're looking at probably over 1,000 apartments minimum that will be going on in town. Excuse me. The quality of my life has changed dramatically in the last few years in the town of Merrimack, New Hampshire. And not for the better. It's been for the worse, to be perfectly honest with you. And I contributed to the type of building and variances that have been going on in the zoning and planning board. Now, I noticed tonight we did have a public hearing. Is that correct? Okay. I brought some newspapers in for you guys, and may I approach the bench, if I may say that. This here is the Merrimack Journal, and it goes in everyone's mailbox every weekend on either Friday or Saturday morning. I have the last couple of weeks that I will pass out to all of you, if I could. You guys can share one. You're all in this together. Good to see you. Good to see you. And I'm going to give you a couple of weeks' worth. I took all the ads out with the coupons because I need them so I can pay the taxes. Now, I'm sure you all get these at home, but you might not look at them in the library or bathroom, whichever one you prefer to do your reading in. If you could turn to the last pages on these, and I will take today's, the one that came in today. This is January 12th, and I have one for last weekend. If we turn to the back of these, is legal notices. Public notices. We have them for Amherst, Mount Vernon, Milford, Bedford, again another Bedford, Mount Vernon, Wilton, Lineborough. I see all these towns, including Hollis. I see no Merrimack, New Hampshire in these legal notices. Now, I don't know if that is by intention, that you do not want people to participate at zoning boards or planning boards, but I can find out what's going on in all the towns around me for free in my mailbox, but not Merrimack, New Hampshire. It's a lot easier. I mean, if people want to find out information, obviously they can get it. But it is a legal requirement to publish these notices. My first question is, what paper are we putting this in? Is it the Nashua Telegraph? Is it the Union Leader? Or is it the Concord Monitor?
No, it goes in the Union Leader.
Why wouldn't we put it in a newspaper that's called the Merrimack Journal that goes in everyone's mailboxes every week for free so that they can know what's going on? Because most of the times the people in this town are finding out what's going on around them as far as construction is concerned when the truck's parked out in front of their house or across the street from their house, and they're finding out then what's going on.
Eileen, did you want to touch on that for Mike? Excuse me.
We absolutely can put them in there. We can, what?
Why hasn't it been? It's been, okay, I appreciate that.
I guess what I would say is I was unaware that people read these and looked at the back of the notices. I mean, it wouldn't be something that I would look at, but
No, and that's fair, but really, who buys newspapers now? Nobody buys newspapers now, but everyone in this town gets this for free.
But I guess what I'm saying is I'm not arguing with you at all. I get what you're saying. So we'd be happy to put them in there from now on, now that we know that there are people that read them.
Okay, that's fair. Then the second part of that is, as far as the notification in the town codes for planning and zoning board. On residential, if you're going to put a deck on your home or a garage in your yard, it's the direct abutters that get notified by the town.
Correct.
And I don't think I have a problem with that. I think that's pretty cool for the most part because that's really all that's impacted. Commercial, something different, and I think that, as a town council, you should take a look at maybe changing the procedures on this. I've had to deal with quite a numerous amount of issues. I'll use Synergy as an example. I appreciate the people that are on the zoning and planning board. They donate their time. But I've also seen the procedure for interviewing people firsthand on how these people get that position. And it seemed to me back a few years ago, it was more of a friend type of deal, or more that they thought the way that you did, as opposed to asking serious questions. I'm requesting that the town spread the notification of commercial construction, and we can, you can discuss it amongst yourselves. Would you like to have a public hearing on it? Should you do something larger like you did with the outlet malls? Because, like, take Synergy when they were being built. The only people that were notified about the construction of that building was the exact abutters. There was more than those 2 or 3 abutters that were affected by that building and what's going on with it right now. If you have more people participate in that procedure, a lot more questions will be asked than the typical run-of-the-mill, because let's face it, anybody that's going to sit on a board for 10, 12, 13, 14 years, which is very well appreciative, can be a little stale. Some of the questions that should have been asked, like, do you really need to have a storage facility open 24 hours a day in the center of town? That was not asked at that meeting. Now, you have to listen. We quickly, when businesses, I'm a small businessman, and I have always promoted being a business-friendly community. But you need to ask the people when they come into town. It's not really about them. It's what you can help give to the community and the people of its community. And these are the requests that we're going to ask you to be a good citizen in the town. We have to deal with the lighting pollution of that building. It's lights on all day, all night. My property value has dropped because of a 300-foot blue Synergy sign that's lit up all day and all night. The beeping of the backing up of moving trucks. Who really moves people's furniture at 2 o'clock in the morning? Or is it drug deals that's going on? I mean, I'm just saying, there's a lot of examples. My cases, there's nothing that I can do about the quality of my life where I'm living right now. It's all said and done. The car dealership that they allowed to do automotive repair down there, nobody thought to ask them, are you going to do brake jobs at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday? None of these questions were asked. So they do it, and there's nothing that anyone can do anything about that. I mean, I think that we should be allowed to have at least a day of silence without having to listen to that. But you can't, and there's nothing that you can do about it because there is no sound ordinance in town. So I'm trying to protect some of the other people that live in this town that might have a commercial project going on within 100 yards of their home dwellings. When Synergy backfilled that area in, and they had to compact that land, they did not walk down there with hand compactors. They bought the biggest, largest piece of equipment that you've ever seen to see them compact that land. And everyone in the quarter mile down there had their foundation shift, crack, or whatever, because everyone ran out of their house going, oh my God, what the hell was that? But those questions aren't asked because nobody asked them, because nobody's there to do that, because who got those notices? So I'm here tonight to request two requests. One is to please put, because back in the days, it was very difficult to get a variance in this town. You had to prove hardship. We give them away left and right now. Planning board does, zoning board does. You don't even need to plead your case, you're getting it. And that's factual. What's disappointing is we don't see it. It happens, and then we have to deal with it after the fact. So I'm asking you to please put all legal notices for public hearings, zoning board, planning board in the Merrimack Journal for the people of Merrimack. And then I'm requesting that if you could change the town code about notifications for large construction sites, however you want to word it, but it should be more than just the exact neighboring abutter, because it affects a lot more people widely than you would think. Any questions?
Mike, and I have no problem with it going in the Merrimack Bulletin, Journal, excuse me. But I find I don't have a problem finding out about much of this because I just go on the website and look at the planning board agenda and stuff like that. And so, I got to believe, too, that a lot of people have found out, like the big project off of Executive Park Drive, a lot of people, I think, use more of social media and the web now for grabbing a lot of this information. And I don't even read a paper anymore. It's the Union Leader online and so forth. So I think that a lot of people look at it that way, too. But I don't have any argument with anything you've said, but I just think that I think a lot of people use those formats,
No doubt about it. But you are required by law
to
put that in a newspaper. You are, Mr. Albert, with all due respect, you're required by law to put that in a newspaper. So why wouldn't you put it in a newspaper that is a little bit more convenient for the residents?
And the town manager indicated she would do it, and I certainly have no
Yeah.
objection to it.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, I'm ashamed to say this to you, but I read this every week, front to page. I look at all those notices like you did, and it never hit me. Never hit me until tonight, until you walked around here. And I said to myself, I know where he's going with this. I know exactly where he's going with this.
Two things I look at every week is the death notices in the back of this, which is unfortunate because it's usually after the
No,
fact.
I do too.
And I'm very disappointed that there's been times where I'm like, I missed that poor man's wake, and I didn't know. But that's because this comes in the mail, and I read it. And I look at all the legal notices, and again, week after week after week, there's never anything in Merrimack, in a Merrimack newspaper.
The second point to the notices, several years ago, I had a neighbor that wanted to put a cell tower on a residential piece of property. And abutters got noticed for that. I'm a direct abutter, but there were people that are across the street that would have been more impacted by the cell tower than me, and they didn't get a notice. So I think you raise a very good point, not just from the commercial piece, but looking at who are we actually notifying as it relates to the type of project that may be going into a particular area. I mean, I absolutely agree with what you're saying from a commercial perspective, but I'm wondering if we have the ability to expand how we notice people regarding projects that are being proposed in a certain area. So I want to thank you for bringing both of this to the council's attention. I really mean that. I appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to get me on that. And I know a lot of people come home and they go right on the internet and, they're looking up whatever social things are going on for the day and everything else. I don't. And there's a lot of us that just don't because it's half of it's just politics and hate now. So why even go there? But this is just too easy of a forum. That's all.
And it does leave a question. I mean, I got a notice, a abutter's notice. A neighbor half a mile down the road was putting up a new garage, and I got a notice if I had any objections, and I wasn't quite sure. It didn't bother me, certainly. I didn't show up at the hearing, but I was kind of, I'm getting that notice, but I guess we're not getting other notices from larger projects. I don't know. Maybe.
I will have Tim Thompson write a memo on the specifics of when they do their notices and that kind of thing, so you can review it and possibly modify it. The other thing I just wanted to say, just for clarity's sake, is the reason Sharon just texted in saying the reason that we stopped advertising public notices in the Merrimack Journal is because they're double the cost of the Union Leader.
Interesting.
But we could do it. We can still do it.
Interesting.
We'll do it. But that's the reason why.
Yeah, I'm like Mike. I don't get on social media and stuff like that because it's very negative. And plus it just draws you in. I actually do buy the paper, but I only buy the paper when I have a purpose, and that's when my sons are playing sports. Because I like to clip out their articles and stuff like that. I'd rather do that than print it off my computer or pay for the monthly fee for, for Union Leader or National Telegraph. So, just want to state that. So.
Yeah, because, again, all these towns are paying the same freight that, that we would.
I was just
stuff
clarifying, Mike.
Yeah,
we'll
that's cool.
still do it.
Awesome. I
We'll do
appreciate it. And just a little, as far as the commercial is concerned, some projects are really big and some projects are pretty small. And you could, do a percentage base, like the outlet mall, you guys did a scope of how big around that. And if you were going to downscale it, you know what I mean? There's scales, there are mathematical scales that you could figure that out pretty easily enough. And the fact is, again, the homeowners should always take precedent over everyone in this town. In all reality, like that lady said earlier during the meeting, that you guys are here for the people. The planning board and zoning board are here for the people of this town. Not really here for the businesses, but for the well-being of the people of this town, to help welcome these people in and adhere to what we as a community would like. Much like Bedford, they go before their planning and zoning boards in there, and they don't say, no, you can't put that Rite Aid in, or you can't build that Walgreens, but we're asking you to not work at these hours or that hours. No, you can't be open 24 hours, and we want you to look like this. And if you'd really like to do business there, you'll do it. Thank you.
You're right. As far as the outlets, I think that the reason they had to go farther is there was a protest petition, I believe. And because of that, it required that they had to go farther out around the properties. But I'm not positive on that. But your point is taken, because I know where your house is. The people across the street had no say from you, farther away from me, but they have that, they're impacted directly by it. So I get the point, and I think Tim could let us know what.
And no disparaging comments about any of the businesses.
Right.
It's not that. It's just that I wish we all had a voice on whether we were going to have a 24-hour storage facility in downtown Merrimack across from residential areas. Would have been nice to have an input on something like that. And I'm sure if we really searched hard, but man, we're working 7 days a week to be able to go home and start seeing what's going on in the town. You always know after the fact. So I'm just asking for those recommendations. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for your
Appreciate
time.
it.
Good luck
Thank
up
you.
there, Tom.
Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can we have a 5-minute recess for a bio break?
Yep. Yeah, we're going to recess for five minutes.
Thank you.
Are we all set? Okay. Next on the agenda, Captain Dudas here to, actually, I'm going to read his memo real quickly, because Captain Dudash has to write all the memos from the PD now. It's, the Merrimack Police Department respectfully requests that this honorable board accept the donation in the amount of $4,110 from Crime Line to be deposited into the K-9 account, also known as the Dallas account. Captain Dudash. Thank
Good
you so
evening.
much.
And that's correct. What's that?
Was that Claire that wrote that?
No, it was me.
Was you?
Just as it said, basically back in December, Chief Roy was presented a check by Crime Line. As you know, Crime Line is a big supporter of the police department. They do a lot of things for us, including fundraising on behalf of, Neighborhood Crime Watch and also the K-9. So this past December Chief Roy was handed a check for $4,110 to be put into the account that we call the Dallas account, which is the name of the K-9 for the police department, to cover expenses such as maintenance and, veterinary bills and also boarding.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Bill?
So Gunny's officially retired?
Gunny has been officially retired, correct.
And I missed the retirement ceremony?
I believe it was 4th of July. Yeah.
Was it really? Okay, shoot. Gunny doing okay, do we know? Good, good. I like to hear that. Okay.
I want to say thanks to the folks at Crime Line. They do a great job in supporting the police department. They work hard, they volunteer, and many of them are part of the department volunteers. So a great group of people. Thank you to them.
And as my record reflected, I think they're up to $24,000 raised for the K-9 program. And with that, we'll make sure we send out a letter of thank you from the chief.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town council accept and expend a donation in the amount of $4,110 from the Merrimack Crime Line to the Merrimack Police Department to be used towards the K-9 AKA Dallas program pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15, and furthermore that the town manager or the finance director be authorized to sign whatever documents are necessary to accept and expend said donation.
Second.
Motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Councilor Albert. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is council to consider Merrimack Fire Rescue's request to apply for a federal assistance to firefighters grant for the purchase of at least 48 portable radios and associated equipment. Chief. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, honorable council members.
What a trend.
It's, I will make sure that I have a memo attached to all my reports from now on. Just kidding. Basically, we're in the first part, or the first step in the process of requesting a grant. Tonight, we're coming before you to requests to apply for the grant, as in the past, so we can ensure that if there's any questions with reference to the data or information that we provided to you. The next step, if we get approval to apply for the grant, we'll apply for the grant. And if we're awarded the grant, we'll come back in front of the council and give you all the details on the grant. But the biggest thing here is that we have a 10% match for what we're looking for. And then at that point, if we are awarded the grant, then again, as I said, we'll come back and go through all the specifics and any questions. But if there's any questions at this point in time on the application process,
So how soon do you, if you get accepted, how soon do you know if you get accepted or to the grant?
The application period is actually open right now. It'll close at the beginning of February. They start, it's a rolling basis on a descending score. There's scores associated with like departments like we are. So we would expect the first rollout of on or around in June, but then they start every 2 weeks on a rolling basis as the scores go down until the money's depleted. So it could be a few months past that.
Could be June, July, August, or September that we may know if we receive it, depending on where we score at and whether and how much they award. So they may not get all they request, so they may get a partial award, and then that'll go out, that money's recalculated, and then they continue the process.
Peter.
Thank you for going out here and trying to get this grant. I think that's great. My question is, my experience with the federal grants are, what strings are there any attached? I know how the feds seem to attach some strings sometimes. Is there any burdensome strings attached to this?
Just the 10% match.
Okay, that's it.
For the Assistance to Firefighters grant, this particular grant program, there is not as many strings as some of the other ones. From the we had requested and received the SCBA grant 2 years ago, and it was pretty much a straightforward process
10%.
once we were accepted with that.
Thank you.
If you're approved for the grant and you come to us to look for the match, what kind of a timeline are we looking for that allocation?
If we're appro-
I mean, we're approaching this budget cycle. I mean, is this something we have to consider this upcoming fall for next year's budget cycle? Like, that's what I'm getting at.
Paul or Eileen?
We actually have the whole expense coming out of capital reserve fund in the budget for next year. The
Okay.
whole expense, much like we did for the SCBA units. And when Assistant Chief Borneman was, when he applied for that particular grant, he applied for it 2 years in a row, and we didn't buy the SCBA equipment until that second one when we had all this money available.
Okay.
So again, I sincerely congratulate the chief and assistant chief for applying for these grants, because you've got a great deal of money on the SCBA equipment that was much needed. So
Yeah, definitely.
good work.
And the idea there is to, we're specifically coming for the radios because it lines up with the high priority items for the Assistant to Firefighters grants. 2 years ago, communication equipment wasn't even listed. It's a newer thing, so they realized that they need to start pushing some money out for communications.
And I agree with what you're attempting to do. I just want to make sure that we budget for it so that we can hold up our end of the bargain. So,
Tom?
that's
So-
only where I'm coming from.
Just to piggyback Bill a little bit, so question I think for Paul and Eileen. So if you do get the grant, then that's 29,800. But I know we have in the capital reserve for the 298. Can we allocate the rest of that 200 and something thousand to something else, like a fire truck or something?
What this is actually not putting money into capital reserve fund, but it's taking money out. So when the money, even though the taxpayers vote to take that expense, it would be coming in at the same amount of money, So it wouldn't really affect the tax rate in that way. So what we would probably suggest is that if we got the grant, we would come to the council once again, as we do any time when money is taken out of capital reserve, even if it's in the budget. Come to the council for the 10% match, leave the balance in there for future years, or maybe not put so much in for a few years because we've already gotten our money for something else. Do you follow me?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Everybody
Mr.
set?
Chairman, I move that the town council approve the Merrimack Fire and Rescue's request to apply for a Federal Assistant to Firefighters Grant, AFG, for the purchase of at least 48 portable radios and associated equipment.
Second?
Motion by Council Bowles, second by Council Allen. Would you like to further address?
Good luck.
Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Thank you.
Oops, sorry about that. Next on the agenda, item number 5, council to discuss options for establishing a special investigation unit within the Merrimack Police Department. Hi, Chief.
I feel very low.
Tom Mahon had a chair that was stuck down, and they wanted to put a dunce cap on him, so. Eileen?
I know I'm going to let the chief and her staff captains do the presentation. Obviously, we've spent a long time, all of us together with Paul, going through all the different options and making sure the numbers were all right and they all jived with each of the various things. But I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that in the interest of clarity and simplicity, we used numbers that were as of today. So if somebody were to get a step, or if the sergeant's position was going to be promoted, or that kind of thing, we didn't take those things into consideration. They're very small numbers anyway. So what I wanted to say is that when you look at the various scenarios, you'll see $39,000 on this page, $39,000 on the next page, and $39,000. So it all kinds of jives and makes sense. So if you would please, once the chief gives her presentation, I would like to give you my recommendation. You don't need to listen to it, but I think that that's the way that it should really work. So she can give her recommendation, then I can give my recommendation, and then you can discuss. Okay? If that's okay?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Hi. Hello, good evening. I don't know if it's good or bad to go last, I'm not sure, but we're going to go with it.
That was a long evening.
It's going to be short. Thank you for having us back here. I know we were here back on January 8th for the budget hearing, and a lot of discussion took place in regards to Special Investigation Unit. We provided handouts so you could take notes on the slides and see them.
Mm-hmm. And I thank you.
We listen. So briefly, before we get started on the numbers portion of it, I just want to give you a small update or a snapshot of what we have done since the last time we were here on January 8th. Since you were kind enough to allocate the money for us to be able to take 2 people, a sergeant and a patrolman, out of patrol and to cover their shifts with overtime, these 2 people have just concentrated on the hotel areas and the drug activity and the crime that has been going on at the hotels. Since that day of January 8th, we have made 17 arrests. Now that's just a 2-week period. When you couple that with the 33 arrests we had in a 3-month period when we concentrate on this again, it just goes to show you that it has not gone away. This is similar to infestation, if you will, of insects or animals, where you have one that comes in and they all kind of come in right after that, and we're finding that. Now, I don't want to mislead you and suggest that every single arrest was for methamphetamine. That was not. But what happens is these lawless people come in and they have warrants for them. We've had immigration come down because we've had people that were wanted and deported. So these are people who are here. We have made methamphetamine arrests. We have made heroin arrests. We have made marijuana arrests. We coupled again with the 17 arrests. In the hotel area alone, we've stopped 45 motor vehicles that were somehow related to the hotels and suspicious activity. And Eileen and I had talked about us saturating the area, doing everything we can to let these people know that we were there. 45 arrests for various things. 45 motor vehicle stops for various things. So we're there and we're active. But that's not the only part that we've been doing. The 3 of us have actually met with 3 out of the 4 hotel managers to begin a networking for them and for us so that they can exchange information. What they're finding is one person from one hotel or more than one person gets kicked out for various things, and they'd go to the next hotel, and they'd get kicked out of there, and they'd go to the next hotel. So what we've done is connected them, and they are going to tell people, we're kicking you out, and just so you know, we're letting all the other hotels in Merrimack know so that you're not going to be welcome there too. These are just part of the issues that we're trying to deal with and come up with innovative ways to not just arrest people and not just do investigations. So we have been extremely busy. The other thing that we can't even touch upon yet is we're noticing an increase in prostitution at the hotels. I showed Eileen a picture of some of the people who are coming in. These people are actually, and we talked about it before, advertising on social media, and they're hanging out in Merrimack hotels and they're asking for people to come. Well, we are so busy with the drug portion of it, with the 2 people that we have concentrating at, that we can't do anything just yet about the prostitution problem. So these things go hand in hand. The crimes that are happening are a direct result of the drug activity, the other people, the lawless people who are coming in and making our town not what it is, or making it appear as though not what it is. So I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot that since you were kind enough to let us do this, it has helped. We were there. It's a daily struggle. I know there was some concern that we're not utilizing all the resources that we possibly could with federal agencies or state and local. and county resources. We are for large drug investigations. They're tremendous. They help us. They're a great resource for us, and they're here for us. But unfortunately, they handle the entire state. They handle the county. They handle their own agencies. So there's only so much that they can do to help us. This is a daily struggle for us. We are continuously going there. Since the beginning of the year in total, we've responded to the hotels approximately 43 times for various things. Now, those could be either an ambulance call or those could be suspicious activity. We went for a disturbance at one of the hotels the other day, which led to a meth arrest. So we're sending 2 people to the hotels every time for their safety because we just don't know what the officers are going to encounter. Short enough? Okay. So in front of you, we have come up with 3 separate scenarios that we could do to try to combat this. So please, the numbers person, Paul's the numbers person, and so if there's any questions as far as math, he did this. So the first scenario that we had discussed, which we are doing now, is we are paying overtime to cover a sergeant and a patrolman. That sergeant patrolmen are working exclusively at the hotels and the drug activity in town because some of the drug activities that they're finding there leads to other drug activity elsewhere in town, but it's directly related to the hotels. So in order for us to pay for, from now until the end of the fiscal year, for the 17-18 fiscal year, a sergeant to fill his overtime is $45,991. To fill a patrolman, one patrolman is $39,834. Now, we had discussed before, so we just wanted to make sure that you understood the options of potentially a sergeant and 2 people, so those numbers are obviously to the right. So in order for us, between now and June 30th, to fill those 2 people in the patrol division to ensure that our sectors are covered and the taxpayers of this town are still receiving services. For a sergeant and 1 person is $85,825. A sergeant and 2 people, if we were to switch that, is $125,659. That's scenario 1. That is not filling anything. That is just from now until the fiscal year paying overtime to fill the patrol division for these 2 officers.
Chief, and I guess I'm kind of looking, and I see you budgeted $227,000 for this fiscal year for overtime, but you're halfway through it, and I don't know where, I don't have that number for me, where you currently stand on that, and so I'm kind of concerned with where this money will come from for either 2 or 3 for the overtime.
That's a very good question, and I'll refer to Paul for the if I could just, the budgeted overtime that we have is for, obviously, overtime to fill vacations, trainings. It also includes holiday pay for the officers who are physically working or who are off. So that one lump sum covers all of those. As far as where we are now, we're depleting it quickly to try to maintain some control, but Paul can tell you.
There have been a number of vacancies in the police department and the patrol division. We believe we are hiring our last patrolman. Just recently, we were down.
He's starting on Monday.
He's starting on Monday. We were down. We have 2 in the academy now that were just hired the beginning of last month. So there's been some savings in salaries. So with the savings of salaries and the associated benefits, we feel that the $85,000 should be covered.
Okay, the 85. How about the 100? How about the
125?
The 125.
That probably will also, that we're pretty clear on that, be able to fit to cover that too.
Thank you.
And if there'll be $125,000 between, if there's not all of it in the police department budget, we can come back to you and ask you to move it from somebody else's budget. So either one would be covered.
Thank you.
So that is scenario A. Scenario B is a little more entailed. So scenario B, which we're hoping, I am hoping, or our staff is hoping, that we go with. So if we had discussed before seeing the need to hire these if you approve new officers, hiring either one or two, hiring them, or three now. So if we were to hire them now, we obviously still would have to pay the overtime, because there is a lot when it comes to training and getting a patrolman ready to go out on the street. We currently are fortunate enough to have some people that have actually passed the testing and are just kind of on a wait list. So given the opportunity to hire them once they're re-interviewed and they are given a conditional offer, through the background check, through all the psychological, the polygraph test, through everything, we wouldn't be hiring them. It's not reasonable to consider it. We would not be hiring them until at least April 1st. Now, the next academy, because the people who we have are not certified, starts on April 30th. What we utilize that time prior to the academy for is in-house training. They qualify with their firearm. They understand. We teach them our policies and procedures, our in-house stuff. We teach them some defensive tactics stuff to get ready, because most of them have never been exposed to police work at all. So with a hiring date of April 1st, we would still have to pay the overtime to cover the 2 people or 3 people that we have doing the drug work. Because we employ them April 1st doesn't mean we can utilize them. Realistically, and if you go through it, they will not be ready to be out on their own just under supervision of a sergeant or a lieutenant until at least November or beginning of December of 2018. So that's the first time that they would actually be ready to be out on their own, because the academy goes from the end of April until August, and then we have a required 3 to 4 month field training program where they are paired with a senior officer and obviously learn how we do things, how to learn the town, and to make sure that they're proficient enough to send out on their own. So where the cost from this goes, so the sergeant and the patrolman's overtime was taken from scenario A. So those are the first 2 lines. Now, a salary for a new sergeant would be until June of 2018. This is all in this year's budget. It's $33,250. A patrolman's salary is $21,350. So
it says salary, but it means salary and benefits. So all those things are including benefits.
Thank you, Eileen. So the total is either obviously $140,425 or $201,609 for sergeant and 2 patrolmen. So now this is just until the end of the year. This is having these people work. They're employed to the town, but we're sending them to training early, and plus the overtime that is required to fill the 2 positions that we've taken out of patrol to do the drug work. Before I move on, are there any questions on that portion of it? No.
I'm jumping in again, but I think some folks are going to be concerned as, all right, we're going to use this overtime, and these officers are going to have to work this overtime, and the concern of you've got cops on the street who are fatigued. So how is this being dispersed to avoid having overworked officers?
It's a great question, and we face that a lot. Obviously, we are up all the time. It's not like, the officers can't rest when they're working. So our shifts run in 8 hours. We don't let an officer do more than 16 hours in a day, whether that's through a detail or whether that's they're working on the street. After 16 hours, there's been studies that fatigue does set in, and we have a job where we have to be mentally ready all the time. So if an officer is here for 16 hours and we need coverage, we'll call somebody else, and we do not let those officers work more than 16 hours, and they're limited in the amount of hours per week as well that they can work overtime.
Okay, thank you.
Whoever, feel free to jump there.
I just wanted to say we've had some discussions about the whole topic of the availability of people when you talk about burning out and all that kind of thing. That the chief would make sure that the priority overtime would not be for details, but would be for covering the staffing here for the town of Merrimack.
Correct. We would call outside agencies for road details, and our own people would be used for patrol. So that was the 2017-18 budget. Now, if we move on, again, continuing with scenario B, starting July 1, when the new fiscal year begins, a new sergeant's salary and benefits is $133,000. A new patrolman's salaries with salary and benefits is $85,398, and obviously, if you double it, it goes over to $170,000. So those are just beginning a full-time employee on July 1st. Those are the full year's salary and benefits for those respective positions. Again, now these officers, if we hire them, will not be ready until at least November or December of 2018. So again, we, to continue on with our daily struggles at the hotel, again, we would have to fill those positions still in the patrol division with overtime. So those two costs, the sergeants, again, up until November 30th of 2018 is $45,991. The patrolman's overtime is $39,835. Now, once November 30th or December, whenever these officers are on the road and by themselves, that overtime goes away because we'll have those positions filled on the street with the full-time officers. So the total for just to the 2018-19 budget with the new positions and the overtime to fill the sergeant and the patrolman we've taken out of patrol until the newly hired officers are ready is $304,224 and $429,457 if it were a sergeant and 2 officers. So now the grand total is for the entire this year, 2017-18, and the 2018-19 budget. So, you know, when you see it, it does look, obviously it's a large number, but it entails every possible scenario that we would run into: overtime, hiring, and filling the shifts of the people, and still allowing us to concentrate 2 people on our drug problem that we're having. Okay. Scenario C, so I promise this is the last scenario. Scenario C is if we say, you know what, we're going to hire not till July 1st. So if we do nothing other than pay the overtime to fill the shifts now, and do not hire until the 2018-2019 year, the salaries obviously would be the sergeant is the same, and the patrolman salary and benefits are the same. However, the overtime that we would have to expend would be pushed out to March of 2019. And that is because if we hire July 1st, we have to go through the entire process of the background check, just as we will now. And the academy does not start until sometime late August, which would push the graduation of that academy to December. And then you still have to go out to 3 to 4 months for that officer to do field training. So it pushes the ability to have 2 trained officers on the road by themselves not until March of 2019. So that is why the salary plus the overtime, you'll see the dates obviously up there. So the total for the 18-19 budget would be $361,442 for one and $513,231. Now that also includes the overtime above for this fiscal. I'm trying. So many numbers for this fiscal year that we have pushed off through every scenario. So those first 2 lines are the overtime to pay to cover the 2 officers that we've taken out of patrol. To complicate things, no, to not complicate things. Just so you know, after they're trained, after they're ready to go, this is what a normal fiscal year would look like. That's without any overtime, without having to cover any shifts. For sergeant and 1 patrolman, it's $218,398. For sergeant and 2 patrolmen, $303,796, and that is just a regular fiscal year.
Just so I can do my arithmetic, Paul, is it every $30,000 adds 1 cent on the tax rate?
33.
33. Thank you.
Yes.
Actually, did you put on the table what you wanted?
Well, again, I want a lot, but in this scenario, yes, scenario.
Do you get to say first, or do I? I think I do. I think
You're the boss.
think
You
I
say
trump
what you want.
Even though you have a gun,
No.
I think I trump you.
That's just to protect you, Nat.
If you don't mind, please. So can we go back to scenario B, please? Okay. My recommendation, surprisingly, is scenario B. And I, like you, are fiscally conservative, while at the same time are interested in making sure that this problem that has crept up on us very quickly is also eradicated very quickly. So scenario B would be my recommendation, which would be to hire one sergeant and one patrolman right as soon as we can, and fill with overtime as the chief has already explained it, and then carry those two positions forward through the budget for next year. How it would affect the budget would be, I already have the new sergeant in there, and we would just need to add a new patrolman, and we would be able to we would find within the general fund budget the money for the $140,000 this fiscal year. So if the $140,000 that you would need to hire those positions now and to do the overtime, we would find it within probably multiple budgets, but be able to come up with that. So that's my recommendation.
The recommendation being scenario B, but the sergeant plus one.
Yes.
Not sergeant plus two, but sergeant plus one.
Sergeant plus one. And the reason why I say that is because clearly the department has been very successful with that model, very successful. I mean, if you think about how many arrests have occurred within that short period of time. I also feel that to get the job done effectively, you can always add more overtime, but it's very difficult to hire somebody and then get rid of them if you find that that person isn't needed over a certain period of time. So I'm just very cautious about hiring 3 people at the same time. If, as I said, if we find that more overtime is needed to cover because it's more effective than 2, then I would prefer to do that.
Chief, what do our resource officers do in the summertime when school's out or on vacation? When the students aren't in school and so on. Is there any way to augment from that pool as well?
Absolutely, and they are still very busy in the summer, just so people understand. There are still school things that they are associated with, and they do school safety things with preschools, and so they do stay busy. However, obviously, when needed, for instance, we had a situation where we needed manpower the other day, and Detective Murray, we had to take him to help us because it's not that we're trying to take away from the school; it's just that we needed people. So he was something that we needed to do, and we would continue to do that.
Yeah. No, good. And I appreciate that. Thank you. Peter?
Chief, I guess, I have the experience and understanding it, but there's a lot of people that understand. Do you see numbers? So, geez, we've made X amount of arrests. I guess maybe if you could explain to the general public, and to my fellow council members, man hours or what that entails when just on a single investigation. I'd be curious how it affects the department.
Absolutely, and it's an important piece for people to know. Captain LeVake actually has some numbers, just kind of round about, and this is on an average. This is certainly nothing to pinpoint because some things take longer, some things take shorter. But I'll let him.
So just to let you know, this is from a time of arrest. So we might be at some place for half an hour, 45 minutes before arrest even occurs. So this time clock starts once we make an arrest. So essentially, we always have a backup officer, secondary officer with us during arrest. They'll probably be on scene for about an hour or so, gathering statements, gathering evidence. If it depends on the type of call, there might be another third officer on scene for half an hour. The arresting officer then transports to the station, and between transport, booking, fingerprinting, photographing, all that stuff, it's probably about another hour. If it's a drug case, what we like to try to do is debrief the subject, meaning we'd like to try to gather intelligence from them. And during that time, we're also trying to confirm that their intelligence is good. So that can take another hour and a half or so. Court paperwork, affidavits, Gerstein affidavits, things we have to show probable cause for the arrest, can take at least an hour. When the bail, we call a bail commissioner in, he comes in and set the bail for the subject. We have to be with them during the whole process as he goes through all the court paperwork. That's now at least 25 minutes. If we have to transport the subject to Valley Street Jail in Manchester, that's another 45 minutes. They come back to the station, have to log evidence. That could be another 45 minutes. So this basic arrest can take upwards of 4.5 hours for one officer, not including the officers that are on scene assisting, gathering statements, taking photographs and such. Now, where complications come in is a lot of times these drug cases, we run into issues where we might have to apply for search warrants. We had a situation recently where we went to a hotel for a disturbance, made an arrest. Well, then, lo and behold, we realized we have to do a search warrant. So now we have to take an officer off the street and have him sit on the hotel room to make sure it's secured, make sure no one gains entry or disturbs any evidence. That officer was there for 5 hours by the time the search warrant was applied for. These search warrants are very long in length. They're very detailed. Usually it'll take about 2 hours for an experienced officer. Meanwhile, while they're doing the search warrant, they're also cross-referencing past reports to gather enough probable cause to make sure we can get into these places. So that's 2 hours for that officer to write the report. He has to find a judge, meet with the judge, have him sign off on the search warrant. That's another hour. Going to these hotel rooms or any houses or any place, they're generally not the neatest, orderly places, so they take us a long time to search. As you know, drugs are very small in nature, and they can be hidden in a lot of locations. Searching, gathering evidence, documenting the scene, that's probably another 2 hours at the scene. After that, they go back to the station, they log evidence again, probably another hour, because usually with a search warrant, there's more evidence to seize. So that search warrant alone took that one officer 6 hours. Now, unfortunately, sometimes it leads into other things, like this case, where it led to another issue that were alerted by the hotel, where another arrest was made, another search warrant was applied for, and next thing you know, these officers are 14 hours on this investigation. And these are two people that we pulled off the street that we called in to assist. So as you can tell, every situation is different, and I'm not going to say every arrest takes 4 hours, because it doesn't. If it's a simple arrest, it could go quicker. But when we're talking drug investigations, they're very detailed, and you have to be very thorough to make sure you gather all the information so you can use it for the future so we can eradicate this problem.
Anything further?
Yeah, I didn't get my chance.
I tried to get you first.
Thank you again. And obviously, Eileen and I have done a lot of talking, and I absolutely understand her position, which I completely support. We had asked you, when we were here last time, people asked me what my ideal situation would be. My ideal situation is a sergeant and 2 people, and that's simply because you can see how much time and effort goes into these investigations. This is just when we have an arrest, and I will not get into how our officers actually develop this information because that would be giving away our secrets. But prior to an arrest, it could be days or weeks that they're gathering information. And officer safety-wise, it's very difficult. However, I will say that we are making it work with 2 people. We absolutely are. It's not, I don't know how many we would have if we had 3 people, but I know even with a sergeant and 1 person, it's absolutely working. I just want to make sure everyone understands, too. We really, really are trying to be as fiscally conservative as we can. I understand that this is putting a burden on the taxpayers. I understand that nobody, including myself or the 2 captains, have asked for this problem to come to Merrimack. But when I look at it and I look at what we could possibly do, I had to, without question, ask for help. And I went to Eileen, and she has been gracious enough to help me with this. You know, a lot of people ask a lot of things of us at the police department. We're more than happy to step up and help every single time. I would not, and we would not, come forward and ask for help if we didn't think we needed it. And I would just, so my recommendation obviously would be scenario B with the sergeant and 2 people, but we can absolutely make a sergeant and 1 person work.
You had said 3 of the 4 hotels, did you say, participated in this little conversation?
That's correct.
Did the 4th not want to, or were just too tied up?
I don't know. I can't speak for that
I didn't
person,
know if they gave you
whether or not they wanted to. You know, they initially indicated they did, but we gave them several options as far as dates, and they didn't come. So, you know, it's unfortunate. I'm not suggesting for 1 second that they didn't. I don't know what their reasoning was, but you know, we'll continue to include them because we have to. It's important for us. I'm good at forcing myself on people. We will do it. The captain has been relentless. He will he will find them and he will hunt them down. Yeah, he knows where they sleep.
Jackie.
I wasn't even, I'm so sorry with my voice. I wasn't even considering all the paperwork. I really was only considering safety of the officers. That's really my big concern.
And I can absolutely, and I appreciate that, and our officers appreciate that you're concerned about that because, and I've made no bones about it, that is my #1 priority. I want to keep Merrimack safe, but I want our officers to go home safely every night. And, you know, we're, again, the type of people we are encountering is creating a more and more dangerous situation that they have to place themselves in. And, you know, can 2 people handle it? Hopefully, they have the tools to do it. 3 people is always better. So.
I'm hoping that you're able to take advantage of the resource officers and whatever creative thing you can find on top of that. It'd be great.
I'll go out if I have
to. Then the job would be done fast, I'm sure.
It's true. So, I mean, I was Stacey Morse undercover. I don't know.
All right. I don't know if anybody would like to make a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a comment if I could. Sure. Since January 8th with the overtime, 17 arrests, that's 1 a day. So that means if you're arresting and processing one perp in that day, that's taking up anywhere from 6 to 8 hours of that officer's time.
That's correct.
Is that a fair assessment?
Depending upon what the arrest was for, but it is a fair statement.
Okay.
Again, some of the if an arrest had led from a motor vehicle stop, that it could take a little less time. But then, excuse me, choking. I'll be all right. Mm-hmm. They as far as the other arrests that we had that Captain Levick referred to, that led to 2 arrests and 2 search warrants the day we had to pull Detective Murray out of the schools for help. You know, those obviously took much longer. So we do it on a kind of an average.
And then 45 motor vehicle stops is just less than three cars a day.
And what we're doing, because we're trying to infiltrate the areas and we're trying to just, if somebody commits a motor vehicle violation or somebody knows that there's a warrant for somebody, you know, we're there. We, you know, we're not harassing people, but we're just letting them know that we are there, and we're not going to go away. Hopefully, we're not going to go away.
I had publicly said to you that I still believe a sergeant and 2 patrolmen is an appropriate way to attack. But that being said, and hearing you agreeing with Eileen that you can make the 1-and-1 work.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. I'll stop.
I just wanted to say that I just got a text from Tom Case saying that for what it's worth, he agrees with me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got the same text too. Yes, I did.
I did too. I didn't know it was there.
So I trust Chief Roy, Captain Dudish, and Captain Levesque to manage the patrol officers that are keeping our community safe. That being said, I would move the Merrimack Town Council approves scenario B, the sergeant and 1 patrolman with the numbers as presented, with the further caveat that the town council be given data on a monthly basis regarding how we are handling the extended stay, or I don't want to target extended stay, but let's just say how we are attacking the problem that we, at some particular point, using this data, that we may revisit and see if we can justify having a second patrol officer participate in the SIU program. I would ask that only so that counselors are up to date with what they're doing to make sure that, like I said previously, I don't want to be throwing money at a problem. I'd rather have you say we got, 2 drug arrests and that we had 18 nuisances that we were able to rectify, and clean up the area, that kind of thing. So that's how I'm thinking about it right now. So again, just to revisit, my motion scenario would be sergeant and a patrolman with the chief or her proxy to provide data to the council on a monthly basis as to how we're attacking the problem.
Peter?
So it's.
Can we have a second? on
I'll
the motion
second.
First? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No,
Tom.
that's okay. Motion by Council Boyd, second by Tom. Yes.
Okay, so under scenario B, that's hiring of 2 new officers for the police department.
Yes, as soon as possible.
Okay.
And as you and I discussed on the phone, there's a little bit of a twist on that because it would end up being one of the sergeants be patrol,
Yeah, okay.
that kind of thing. But
And it includes the overtime for
Yeah.
the work to start.
And that, and that being said, you look at the numbers, and I have to agree. And the chief has said that hey, she and her staff can make it work. So again, I'm going to say that I would support this option B or scenario B at this point. I mean, and it's like Councilor Boyd said, let's get some updates and, revisit as time goes on over the year and see where we stand, in 6 to 12 months on this issue as well. So, thank you.
Jackie?
I'm still inclined to want to give you the 2 patrolmen and the new sergeant. If you think it would work, I don't think you're going to overhire regardless because there's going to be attrition coming. I'm worried about their safety. I think there are some tough situations that they're going to be facing. And with misgivings, I will support the council on this, but I feel it's not throwing money, it's not throwing just willy-nilly people, it's trying to deal with an infestation.
Thank you, Jackie. Any further discussion on the motion?
I don't necessarily disagree with Councilor Flood's comments. Okay, I think we're all, for the most part, aligned on attacking the problem. It's just how do we really want to attack it at this stage? But I want to see. I mean, there's a reason why we pay Eileen the salary that we do. There's a reason why we pay the chief the salary that we do, and that's because they have the education and the institutional knowledge and the experience to provide these particular recommendations to us. So I think we need to. They're in sync. They've got the Zen thing going on right now. So I'm sure they'll come back to us.
It's the hair, it's short hair.
Oh, that's the short hair. Well, I'm one to talk. So.
Shiny side of the tape.
So, yes, this is the shiny side of the table. So, I would move the question after Councilor Albert.
And again, I'm going to trust, and obviously I trust that the chief and the town manager. I mean, and I agree with you, Jackie. If this is becoming such a dangerous situation, I'm sure they're going to reapproach us and say, "Look, this is what's going on." So, I trust that, but I'm certainly sympathetic to how you feel.
And I just want to reiterate to you as well, last time we had talked, we will not be taking these 2 people out of what they're doing. They're not going to supplement patrol. They are just going to concentrate on the problems that we are having.
All right. No further discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. 5-0-0. Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Sorry
Chief,
for the
thank
late
you.
night.
Cap, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, second quarter financial review. Paul's going to review the key financial information for the quarter ending December 31st, 2017. Joy. Just be a second for Paul to set up. Bye, guys. Thank you now. Yeah, wait. Oh, I can't find it. Oh, here we go. 15 minutes, Paul, that's it. 15
All right.
minutes.
I can do it in 5.
Very good.
I can get it done in 5, real quick. We're in great position financially. We have significant appropriations, and our revenues are coming in better than expected on some key areas. Some of the major things that we do look at is our health insurance, and right now we're about $22,000 less than last year. We are all the unions, all the town employees are on the new plan that we changed to at this time, and we are seeing the trends in the health insurance, and hopefully we'll garner some more savings further on down the road with changing the health plans that we did last year. New Hampshire retirement is up across the board. Fire due to being fully staffed this year at this time versus last year when they were short-staffed by 2 or 3 people. And then we just heard that the overtime for police is up, and that's why their New Hampshire retirement is up, because their overtime numbers are up this year. Overtime comparison, like I said, even though fire is coming down from $350 last year to around $300,000 this year, most of that occurred in the first quarter when they were short-staffed. The 8 firefighters that they were short, that now they have a full complement of firefighters. And of course, we talked about the police. Surprisingly enough, through half a year, these numbers are through December 31st. The highway overtime is basically the same as the year before. So we did have that one storm on Christmas Day, which really put a damper in some of the overtime numbers because it was a holiday storm. So overtime for that was a little bit higher than normal. Revenues. There's a couple of good purple lines there. One is we're just going to talk about the auto registrations continue to grow through December 31st. We're on track to hit our number, and I believe that we should be good. The numbers appear in January to be coming in pretty solid again. So even with the interest rate hikes, it seems like people are still buying vehicles. I'd like to break down building permits and interest on pooled cash a little bit, especially that interest on pooled cash. As you can see, that first bar that says $200,000 go back to 2008, 2009. It's taken us almost 10 years to get our interest back over the $200,000 level. And to be honest with you, Tom and I, Tom's my deputy finance director, have been pounding the pavement. We've been beating up the banks.
Very good.
We've been getting the best interest possible, deals that possible, and we're projecting that we're going to be in the $350,000 to $375,000 range for this year in interest. The building permits are a little bit higher also through this time, and we're hoping to see the trend once that snow gets out of here in about 8 weeks, that the building permits start taking off again.
Excellent.
That's what I have. Once again, we are in good financial shape. We have significant appropriations to cover our expenditures, significant cash flow, and like I said, our revenues are coming in strong. Excuse me.
Very good. Thank you, Paul.
One question,
Bill,
Mr. Chairman.
please.
Paul, do you have the ability to do a comparison of the town of Merrimack as it relates to what's going on across the state of New Hampshire? I mean, I don't know if the state of New Hampshire keeps numbers of these particular things, like town of Merrimack versus the state of New Hampshire, or can you do like town of Merrimack versus, I don't know, Rochester, Londonderry, that kind of thing, if that's available?
There is not a database where I can get current information. There's a database where I can get prior year information through what was expended for these people. But there is nothing that keeps it up to date and current.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. I told you 5 minutes.
You did. I'm impressed. The only one tonight. So next on the agenda is the approval of the January 8th and January 11th minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town council approve the Monday, January 8th, 2018 minutes with the following change. Page 7, line 45. First sentence reads, "The department has always been able to maintain a very safe community, period." It then reads, "however, comma, is finding itself now in a tremendous crisis." I would just change it to have it read, "however, the department is finding itself now in a tremendous crisis."
Or a comma where the period is, but you're right, either way.
However you want to fix it. Just so that it reads nice. Otherwise, that's all I had.
Anything further? All right, we have a motion on the January 8th minutes. We have a second. Crickets.
Very good, very good.
Motion by Bill and seconded by Peter. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. 500. January 11th is the other, yes, January 11th minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Thursday, January 11, 2018 minutes as presented.
Motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Tom. Any discussion on that? Any other changes? No, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. 500. Comments from the press, comments from the public. Nobody's here. Comments from the council. Council Boyd.
Thank you. Just a point of personal privilege. I want to thank Sean Valenti and a whole host of people that live by the Reeds Ferry School, Babusick Brook, Pearson Road, Brenda Lane, Kathy Street, Cabot Road. As many people may know, when the chief was here a couple of weeks ago, guy in the code, I talked about my dog Adidas getting out and getting PC'd. Well, he got out again, and he went on a 21-hour bender. He actually ran across Babusick Brook as frozen. The paw. He's an 80-pound oof, I should say. So, on behalf of Adidas, my family, and the Midnight Run Kennel, I really want to thank Sean and all of the neighbors in there, people that were on social media. I mean, we talk, like Councilor Thornton alluded to earlier, there's always something negative on social media, but I got to tell you, I thank God for the Merrimack Forum when it comes to dogs and cats, because the people that pay attention and know, and they pay attention and they're very quick to report, and I think it's what makes Merrimack. We are a very pet-friendly community because people do pay attention, they give a hoot, and they're very quick to report on these certain things. So I want to thank all the people in those neighborhoods, and especially Sean, for corralling Adidas and his 80-pound body. I really, really appreciate it. On a business note, I would like to ask Eileen to agenda an item for February 8th. The Senate has introduced Senate Bill 309, which is providing standards regarding PFOAs and PFOSs to give DES some standards regarding how water quality is measured. The bill also includes an annual review of standards. My editorial comment is I'd like to encourage the Senate to add some of the C4, C5, C6 that Mrs. Thomas alluded to today. So I think it gets a little bit more expansive. But that being considered, I would like to add that to the February 8th agenda as a separate item, not as a part of the PFOA update, but as an agenda item for the council to discuss actually submitting a letter in support of Senate Bill 309. And since we're meeting on February 8th, we won't have any time in between. Go Patriots. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a couple of things. First, I'm going to be on vacation, finally going on a very well-deserved vacation, if I don't say so myself, from the February 3rd to the 10th. So I won't be there for that meeting. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that as we start talking about regulating of some of these different kinds of PFAS and various substances in the water, we have to keep in mind that the EPA is really not on their game as far as, so for instance, C6 is not even on their emerging contaminants list. So I realize that we need to leave room open for them to start discussing these things once they become, regulated and investigated. But I don't think it's necessarily advisable for us to start listing them until they get on the emergency, because even PFOA is only on the emerging contaminants list still. So. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Not to lengthen this meeting anymore, but it is one of the terrors because everybody's got their professional and scientist that knows what they're talking about. But I don't know. I mean, I believe it's not necessarily good stuff for you.
But it's the EPA that regulates these things and advises.
Yeah.
Does their job.
Right. And so, no, I get it. I mean, ultimately, yeah, never mind. Anything further? See nothing.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilor Boyd, seconded by Tom Thornton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 5-0-0. Thank you, everybody.